Let me start that over again. So we'd like to begin by acknowledging that Concordia University is located on unceded Indigenous lands. The Ganyan-Gehaga Nation is recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather today. Jojage/Montreal is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today it is home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future and our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. So I'll just do a quick roll call. Same thing as always, I'll just say your name and you can say present. Some more people are joining. Okay, so we'll start with the executives. Isaiah, are you here? I heard you before, so I'm pretty sure you're still here. Malcolm?
Present.
Thank you. Sarah?
Here.
Thank you. Manuela?
Here.
Thank you. Daniel?
Here.
Thank you. Victoria? I did see you just join, so you...
Sorry.
Oh, thanks. Holly?
Here.
Thank you. Eduardo?
Here.
Thank you. So that makes all the execs. Jared? It's not here. Diana?
Here.
Thank you. Harrison?
Here.
Thank you. Danielle?
Here.
Thank you. Matthew? Matthew K?
Here.
Thank you. Wouldn't be a meeting without you. Chelsea?
Here.
Thank you. Howard?
Here.
Thank you. Jeremiah?
Banana.
Thank you. Lauren?
Here.
Thank you. Zachary?
Here.
Thank you. Arye?
Present.
Thank you. Sarah?
Present.
Thank you. Margot?
Here.
Thank you. Shivani?
Here.
Thank you. Amma?
Present.
Thank you. Yasmin is not here. She sent regrets. Marlena?
Here.
Thank you. Chris K?
Here.
Thank you. Chris D?
Present.
Thank you. Matthew B?
Here.
Thank you. Roman? Not here. Sean?
Present.
Thank you. Paige?
Here.
Thank you. Anais?
Here.
Thank you. James? Just saw you join, so he might be in the middle of joining. Desiree?
Here.
Thank you. Hirsch? Also just saw you join, so we'll keep you on standby. Oh, there we go. And Natalia. Okay, not here. All right, well, we almost have a full house, so that is awesome. And that being said, it is Wednesday, August 26th, so just a birthday shout out to Desiree and Shivani. Happy birthday, folks.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Birthday. Happy birthday.
Just had to embarrass you. Okay, so that being said, if there's nothing further, we can move on to the motions. So the first one that we have is the anti-Holocaust denial motion, and this one was submitted by Chris D, Margot, and Harrison. So Chris, you have the floor.
Thank you. Would you be doing a screen sharing or?
Oh yeah, sure. Do you see the little button? I set it up so that you can use it, or at least you should be able to do, in the bottom kind of like toolbar. Does it say share screen for you?
No, but it's okay. I'll just read it from my computer then. It's
Okay.
fine. Okay.
Oh yeah, everyone has the motions from the documents package, so they should be able to read along.
Okay, no worries. So I guess I'll just get started then. So.
Yeah, sure. And if you don't want to read the whereas clauses, that's okay. You can just read the be it resolved at the end.
Okay. I know. So whereas anti-Semitic sentiments and culture are present at Concordia University, whereas Holocaust denial is on the rise and an issue present at Concordia University, whereas Holocaust denial and anti-Semitism goes against the fundamental mandate of the CSU and the university as an institute for learning. Whereas Holocaust denial is harmful to LGBTQ students, Romani students, Jewish students, and all other groups that were targeted and exterminated during the Holocaust. Whereas the CSU was formed to protect and advocate for and protect the interests of students. Whereas the CSU bylaws under section 6.3, task and powers of council, section F state that the council may enact, amend, or repeal positions that direct the union's political orientations and representations. And I'll just go ahead to the be it resolved.
Yeah,
So
sure.
be it resolved that the following be adopted into the CSU position book. So do I go ahead and read the
Yeah, the supporting document you sent along with it.
Okay, so the CSU opposes anti-Semitic rhetoric and culture present at Concordia University and within the Montreal community. The CSU opposes Holocaust denial, being the act of denying the existence of the Holocaust. The CSU also opposes anti-Semitic remarks and harassment and calls on all levels of government to recognize and address the challenges the Jewish people face not only within the boundaries of the school, but within the Jewish community at large. Okay. And be it further resolved that this position is sent to referendum for ratification during the 2020 CSU by-election. And be it further resolved that the budgetary impact is nil.
Thank you. Do we have a second for the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Harrison. And your motivation, Chris.
So as you all know, anti-Semitism is one of the worst forms of hatred and discrimination. And this has been an issue for thousands of years. And it's sad that we're still talking about it in 2020. And it's unfortunate that anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic remarks have been on the rise again, and not only worldwide, but at Concordia University. I've witnessed this since I started here in 2017, and it's been disturbing that there's been zero action until now. So something I've heard students on campus say was that the Holocaust was made up, that the abhorrent events that took place were faked with the goal to play the victim or to pretend to be oppressed. And these remarks were made by students with various political ideologies and cultural backgrounds, showing that anti-Semitic rhetoric and hatred knows no boundaries. These comments and the rising anti-Semitism at school have made my Jewish friends and myself very uncomfortable. I've witnessed tears, depression, emotional distress, and even some wanting to leave Concordia due to their experiences. And these events are also reasons why I ran a campaign to dismantle anti-Semitism at Concordia to the best of my ability during my mandate, as this hatred has been handled with too much tolerance at Concordia. This is the first step, and much more will be done until my mandate does end. And I want to make sure that my university, which to be honest is the first time I actually have love in the same sentence as a school, will be a comfortable place for everyone, no matter the religion, ethnicity, race, or gender. And I want Concordia to lead by example on how we can make a culture where everyone is accepted and feels welcome. So it will be hard, and I know it won't happen overnight, but it's something that needs to be done, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone here to make that happen.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Is there anyone else who wants to speak on this before we move to a vote?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll do it.
Oh, well, Margot, go ahead. And then
there's just a spelling mistake in there, folks. Just Holocaust is spelled wrong.
Oh, okay.
That's all.
Michelle, can you just make sure it's reflected properly in the minutes?
Got it. What's the
Okay, thank you.
error now?
Sorry?
Oh, sorry.
What was the error?
I think there were, sorry, could I just, I think, because there was 2 docs that I sent. I don't know if the right one was sent to you though, but one of them had 2 L's in it. I don't know if that's the error that Margot is referring to, but yeah, that should be fixed. If it
Is that it, Margot?
Hang on.
I have
in the-
1 L in the documents. Is that
It
correct?
should be spelled with an O. Hollow,
Yeah,
not
it says
holla.
holla.
Oh, okay. Got
Yeah.
it. Got it. Yes.
All right, perfect. So that will be
Thank
reflected
you.
in the minutes.
Very much.
Thank you for pointing that out, Margot. Was that
None
all?
of us noticed it.
That's all.
Perfect. James, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, sorry, the parliamentary language, but Holocaust denial is trash. So
That wasn't that bad. All right, Hirsch, go ahead.
I just wanted to amend the wording of the motion because it currently says that we're putting this in the positions book, and then it goes, oh yeah, but side point, we're also sending it to referendum. It should be, at least this is my understanding based off of the, what do you call it? The referendum question which passed at the last referendum is that it should be phrased as that the CSU Council sends this to referendum to be added to the positions book. rather than the CSU council is putting this in the positions book.
Oh, yes, that's a good point. That be it resolved should be stricken. Do we have a second to just to remove that?
Could I? Yeah, sorry, Margot, go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to, I'm not sure that's, the intention behind it was to send it to referendum to be ratified. Because when we change our bylaws or anything else, we can, by a 2/3 majority vote, accept changes in our bylaws and then ratify them during referendum. So the idea was like, we can accept it for now and send it for the by-elections.
Okay, that's fair. Is that okay, Hirsch?
Wait, so if I understood correctly, what we're suggesting is that we accept it for now, despite the fact that that would violate a referendum question.
Yeah, so
I mean,
in the bylaws, it actually says that things are accepted and then ratified at referendum. I can pull up the relevant bylaw.
okay, well, as long as the wording makes sense. It's a technical point, not a
Got it.
ideological one.
Yeah, I totally understand. I'll just pull up that relevant bylaw for you. It says that changes are in effect. Anyways, this is just semantics. Anyways, okay. If I find it, I'll read it out. But if not, is that all good? Okay, James, go ahead.
Can I call the question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're the last person on the speakers list. If there's nobody else, we can move to a vote then. Is there any opposition to this motion? All right, then it carries unanimously. So thank you very much, folks. Sorry, I just saw the question in the chat. So let me just clarify this bylaw. And find the exact wording for it, because I think it's still causing a bit of confusion. Yeah, so 21.2 says amendments may be in force and effect upon approval by a 2/3 majority vote of council. This is talking about bylaws, but shall be in force and effect only until the end of the term of office when they are enacted, unless they've been confirmed by a simple majority of quorum of the members voting in a referendum. So it's like they're approved and then they're actually approved at the referendum. Does that make sense? Okay, so if not, we can move forward with, if so, we can move forward to the budget comparison motion, and this one is yours, Lauren.
Okay, I read it first.
Yep.
Does anyone want me to share my screen for it?
If you want.
Doesn't matter to me.
You can just read it.
Okay. Whereas council is accountable for managing students' money responsibly, whereas financial transparency with the student body is a necessity, whereas the budget should be understandable to students at large, be it resolved that council task the finance committee to compare the budget from the previous year to the current year and identify any variances that exceed $5,000. Be it further resolved, the Finance Committee provide a brief explanation, 2 or 3 sentences, for all variances exceeding $5,000. The explanation should be understandable to students at large. Be it further resolved, the explanations for the variances must be given before council can approve the budget.
Right, do we have a second for the motion?
Second.
Second by Harrison. And your motivation, Lauren?
So I just saw a need for this when I was reviewing the budget with Howard and Matthew Kaminsky, that it was just really difficult to understand the budget and like why we were making certain changes to the budget, and it was just really confusing. And if I as a counselor was having trouble understanding the budget, then I'm sure students at large would not be able to understand the budget either. And I had to have people from the finance committee go through it line by line with me in order to explain everything. And also, in addition to that, there's multiple sections in like the budget already that have a column for descriptions, but they're not necessarily filled out. So I don't think it's necessary for finance committee and for the budget to have a description for every single line. But $5,000 is a lot of money to me. That's a lot of money to students. So I think that any variance over 5,000, whether it's positive or negative, should have an explanation of 2 or 3 sentences, which is very short, and I don't think that's too much to ask for.
Great, thank you. Howard, go ahead.
Yeah, just to speak a bit on this, everything Lauren said is correct. I reviewed the budget with her and Matthew, and I found there were a lot of issues. I mean, there were some simple calculation errors, but other than that, even I found some of the lines were not clear, and they had a description section, yet the description was either not filled out or unclear. So I feel it's just a very important, 5,000 is a good number. It's a material number, as we say in accounting. So I do agree that there needs to be an explanation for at least the material amounts over 5,000, and it needs to be clear for the students. We want to make this budget transparent. We don't want to make it so only the finance or the business students can understand. We want every student to be able to understand it. So just making it more clear, I'm totally for this. That's it.
Thank you. Isaiah, go ahead.
So yeah, I like the initiatives in terms of making it more digestible and transparent for students to understand the language and just the system of budgets. One of the concerns that I have though is having the variances accounted for before we approve the budget, in the sense of like, we're in uncharted territory where now we're end of August and we still don't have a budget that's approved. And I think it's more important that we have a budget that we can agree on between council and executive so that we can continue doing our job. And then as the mandate progresses, because the budget is just a working document, right? Where it's like, yes, we put the lines in the sands, but things are subject to change. And this is more so like, would be more in tune with when the CSU is being audited, or when like, just, it could be on a rolling basis that once the budget is created, we can do a comparison, like once it's approved and ratified, we can start on that comparison between last year and this year type of thing, versus like trying to figure out a budget that we potentially would create variances in. And then if it's not agreed upon, if it's not this and that, then we have to go through like this more bureaucratic process, if that makes sense. So it's like this would, I foresee this being like kind of like FinCom or the finance coordinator's job throughout the whole mandate, but I wouldn't hold it to the approval of their budget, because it's something, it's best practices that should be just done as we go forward.
Thank you. Lauren, go ahead.
I mean, I have to disagree, because as a counselor, I don't want to approve a budget without understanding changes made to the budget. And there's some changes that are like $40,000 variances, and I want to know where $40,000 is going, or why aren't we spending $40,000, or where's that $40,000 going? And to be honest, there's not that many variances that exceed 5,000. And I was able to go through it with Harrison and Matthew pretty quickly, and they were able to give me an explanation to most of the variances pretty fast. So I agree that like there's a sense of urgency that we do need to complete the budget, but I don't think it's that much additional time and that much to ask a finance committee. Like, I'd love someone from finance committee to kind of speak on like, is this really that much work for you guys to go through and do it? I know Howard and Matthew was able to answer it pretty fast. Like, I don't think that it should take more than like an extra 2 hours of work to go through it and kind of just give 1 or 2, like 2 or 3 sentences. I don't think that's much to ask for.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak on the motion? Okay, so if not, we can move to a vote. So first I'll just see if this is unanimous. So is there any opposition to this motion? Okay, so if there's no opposition, then it carries unanimously. Was there anything else you wanted to say on it, Lauren?
No, I'm good. Perfect,
thank you. So with that, we can move on to point 5 on the agenda, which is committee structure. And Matthew, this one's yours. And I believe you'd submitted an amended version?
Yes, so the amended version is just the subject portion that's in red. So if you want, I could just go ahead and read it.
Yes, please.
So whereas there are no current regulations or strategies to encourage a natural rotation of committee seats, whereas strategies that produce a natural rotation system promote diversity in the workplace, be it resolved that any individual who served one full mandate, which can be measured by one full calendar year on any committee, would have to rotate committees in their re-elected mandate unless specifically allowed for by council with a 2/3 vote. Be further resolved that any board of director member cannot serve on more than 2 committees at any given moment unless specifically allowed for by council with a 2/3 vote. Be it further resolved that each committee be represented by at least 3 faculties unless specifically allowed for by council with a 2/3 vote. Be it further resolved that the budgetary impact of this motion is nil.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Harrison, and Matthew, the floor is yours for motivation.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree to a certain extent, right, that there's been some tension, to say the least, with how committee structures have been. And I think that an appropriate response would be to create a mechanism that would allow for this tension to be resolved in the future with future councils and even possibly this council, right? So I think the idea is just to make sure that we follow a system that kind of works, that's been proven to work. And I think by creating certain metrics, like in the motion itself, I think we can really create a more diverse set of committees. And I think we all know that when we have more diverse opinions and we have more diversity in many different aspects, it produces greater results. So that was kind of the idea behind it.
Great, thank you. Hirsch, go ahead.
I mean, I'd like to propose what I would hope is a friendly amendment, although that's up to Matthew, is be it further resolved that this be implemented going forward with nominate for future nominations to committee positions. So someone who was on a particular committee last year and is currently on this year would not be affected, although if in the future they wanted to go on to a committee, that's when it would go into effect. So it wouldn't just, or if currently someone has 3 committees, they would be allowed to keep them for now. But if they wanted to, say, if a seat opened on a committee they wanted, they would have to drop 2 of them to go onto it.
Yeah, so first of all, Hirsch, it would have to be going forward because we, in the standing regulations, can't kick people off committees without a certain following rules that are in the standing regs. And also, when you say future, would you be able to specify, like, when you say going forward, just so we have, like, do you mean starting next year, or do you mean?
I guess from here on it.
Okay. So like
starting today. No, okay.
Okay. So to add a further be it resolved, let me just pull up the motion, a further be it resolved that these changes be in effect as of today, but not affect current committee composition or something to that effect?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, or be it further resolved that these changes be implemented going forward.
Okay. Do we have a second for the amendment?
Second.
Second by Matthew. Is there any opposition to adding the amendment? Okay, so it is considered friendly. And Lauren, go ahead.
Just a second, I want to ask
a question. Sorry?
I want to ask a question on the amendment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Would this mean that it applies to all counselors now, which means that, you know, there's going to be an evaluation of which counselors sat on which committees?
No, it would apply going forward. The thing is that committee members of committees can't be like removed from a committee without following the specifics in the standing regulations. So it wouldn't apply to the current committee composition. It can't.
Okay.
Okay, Lauren, go ahead. Or Hirsch?
No, I just wanted to propose another amendment.
Okay, I'll put you back on the speakers list for it. Lauren, go ahead.
Okay, there's 2 things. I wanted to know if this motion was going to apply to ad hoc committees and how that would work to, like, is this only for standing committees or ad hoc committees? And like, can that be specified in this motion so we know like what committees this is being applied to? And I also wanted to ask, like, before we pass this motion, I really would like to get a document of all, like, everyone that's on committees, like, I know James, Hannah, like you created that document, but that document really hasn't been updated. We've had some changes to it, but there's been nothing official. And I've talked to Daniel about it, and he's probably going to do this in the next couple of weeks or so. But I feel like we should have a document saying like who's on which committee. Like, are there a lot of people that are on more than 2 committees? Like, is it feasible to limit everyone to 2 committees, and how is that all going to work? Like, I feel like a document that shows us our distribution through the committees might be a good thing to look at before we pass this motion, and potentially like might be a good idea to send this to policy committee first and get that document that I was talking about like with Daniel and have that proposed to policy committee before we pass this at council.
Thank you. Matthew, did you want to answer the first set of questions? And Lauren, I can get you that document just by updating James's previous document with the committee composition, but it'll take me like a day.
I actually made one recently. Like I made one at the beginning of the year. I remade the one James Hannah had, and I had put it on the Teams account. In general, if you go in there, you'll see all the files, and we can just update that one. I had all the committees, all the definitions.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody has access to it if they have access to Teams. So,
thanks, Victoria. Matthew, did you want to answer the first part of Lauren's questions?
Yeah, I think it would make sense for this to apply to standing committees, because I think ad hoc committees, depending on what the purpose is, right, it's less work naturally. I mean, I'm sure there's certain ad hoc committees, right, that do a lot of work, and I'm not pushing that, but I think if this is just more of a general standing committee motion, then I think it would be like, because they tend to do a lot in their mandates, so 2 for that would make more sense than, you know, if you're on one ad hoc and you're on finance committee, for instance, it may be disproportionate the amount of work compared to like 2 standing committees. So I would the spirit was for standing committees.
Okay, thank you. Emma, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I would not really go for this motion because I do not see how it would improve representation and even an even distribution of opinions among councillors and even an even distribution of votes. I'm saying that for 2 reasons. First, I don't think that councillors, especially those that are returning, should necessarily be limited by the committee that by the number of committees that they're going to take. I think that because this is primarily a volunteering position, people that want to get involved should get involved as much as they want, beyond just the political disputes and whatnot. I think that we should also make these rules in a way that allows for people that genuinely want to get involved to have as much committees as they want. Because my second reason for going against this actually addresses the first. We're going, probably next year, we're going through faculty equality. We're going to have a greater, a lesser degree a lesser number of counselors that are incoming. Let's say some will probably want to have more committees than others. Some will not have enough time to get involved in certain committees. We're already having policies that are going to set, you know, regular meeting times for counselors. It's so interwoven that I don't see that putting more barriers for the involvement of a counselor, how that would really help, because we're gonna have way less people for a higher number of committees. So I don't see how this would function, especially as the chair just mentioned, it is something mainly for how we're gonna go forward. I don't really see how it would fit in that framework. So I would go against this motion.
Great, thank you. Just to clarify, faculty equality didn't pass in the last referendum. So that wouldn't be coming in next year, Emma.
Perfect then.
Isaiah, go ahead.
That's just 2 things. One, I just wanted clarification, because in the amendment, it said that within the year, like you would measure it within a year. But I think it might be more appropriate to measure it within the mandate, because we do have counselors who come in and out of the by-election. And then I guess in terms of like because otherwise, like that just creates the nuance of allowing someone to have a year and a half in the committee when it's like you're trying to, I guess, make everybody have an experience within 1 year of a committee. And then I guess in the spirit of maybe not restricting people who come back with more experience and more knowledge and getting involved, maybe making it no more than 2 years type of thing. So if you're a brave soul to get involved with the CSU for like 3 years more, sitting on a committee for 3 years, like you can give the opportunity up to somebody type of thing. I know there's a mechanism to say about 2/3, but and like just I guess like I like the spirit of making sure that counselors don't sit on more than 2 committees, because it becomes very cumbersome and it limits opportunities as counselors are sitting on 3, 4, 5 committees when there's limited space.
Thank you. Margot, go ahead.
Irisane, sorry.
Thank you. Matthew. Matthew K.
To address some of the concerns really quickly. So what I meant, the spirit was that the calendar year was from the point elected. So if someone was elected in the by-election, it would be until the following fall. If someone was elected in the spring, it would be until the following spring, by like just adding another 365 days. So if, for instance, someone only sits on the committee for half of their 365-day start, it would be like cut. And then if they joined again and joined the same committee, it would pick up from that point they left off for the period of days that would make up to 365 days, if that makes sense. Otherwise, I can try and clarify it like through an amendment. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is like, I don't want to restrict, the purpose of this was not to restrict anybody. That's why I said that there would be a 2/3 option for anybody that would be motivated. Like I think it was, it may have been you, Amma, that had told me that you had been on more than 2 committees. Tell me if I'm wrong, but you know, for people like you that are extra motivated and do great work, I'm sure this council, as an example, would be okay with you being in more than 2 committees in the case where, you know, if there was no one else willing to go on the committee, everyone would be like, you know what, Amma, you can go on, and then you'd be able to do your great work on the 3rd committee. So that's why I made sure to create the exception of the 2/3 vote so that people like you and others that are very motivated could do their great jobs on more than 2 committees, or if they were happened to be restricted by this regulation.
Thank you. Just to reconcile that with the standing regulations, from your clarification, Matthew, the thing about a calendar year is that would violate the standing regulation about removing people from committees by forcing somebody to resign. Say if they had started in November, they would be forced to resign in November. And if it isn't a standing regulation clarifying another standing regulation, it's just a motion that violates that part of the standing regs. So it might just need a little bit of reworking, like a bit of rewording, if I can suggest that.
Would it be possible then to like suggest to bring this to policy?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would be a very good thing
perfect.
to do.
Yeah, great. So I would shift that there.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just hope that somebody else makes that motion. Lauren.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm just following the speakers list. Lauren, go ahead.
I motion to send this to policy committee, please.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Harrison. Is there any opposition to sending this to policy committee? Okay. So in that case, that carries unanimously. It will go to policy committee and then come back to council for review. And if there's nothing further on committee structure, we are on, or Emma, did you want to say something or did you just forget your hand up?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we are on equitable hiring practices, and Matthew.
Hi, sorry. Sorry, I just wanted to say something very quickly. Sort of a point of information.
Mm-hmm.
I think the referendum on council composition did pass last election.
I don't know, Chris, do you want to clarify this? Because I know that you dealt with it, but I remember we spoke about it and it was the 2/3 rule.
If I'm not mistaken, you were right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just hoping Chris could maybe clarify, since I know he dealt with it more than I did, but I think he might have stepped away. But yeah, it's
can I?
It passed in.
Hello?
Oh, go first. Oh, Chris, we can hear you.
Chris, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, the council restructuring motion referendum question did not pass. The reason is because we were making an amendment to the letters patent that requires a 2/3 majority. So we did not get the 2/3 majority. we had 63% rather than 66.6%. So that did not pass.
Oh,
Thank you.
thanks for the clarification. I just want to clarify. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chris. Okay, so if there's nothing further, we can move on to the equitable hiring practices. And Matthew K., this one is yours.
Perfect. So I'm going to read it out as you guys see it. And then when I get to the points where a few little word changes were made, I'll point them out. So whereas several forms of bias are present during hiring and appointing selection processes, whereas these forms of bias do not allow for the political, gender, and cultural equity in one's prospective employment, whereas successful hiring practices are necessary to promote fair and equitable hiring practices while being cognizant of implicit biases, whereas successful hiring practices encourage marginalized individuals to enter the CSU while ensuring that they feel safe in the space once they are in. Be it resolved that all incoming appointment committee members and executives be aware of biases observed in society through either a training or mandatory reading and quiz. Be it further resolved that the CSU reword job listings to avoid masculine wording such as ambitious, challenging, and demanding, and make sure that this word is neutral to encourage female and gender non-conforming individuals to apply. In advance, I'm sorry if it does sound patronizing. This is what I got online, so I really didn't mean that if it comes across that way. I just wanted to make sure I covered all the bases from what I saw online. Be it further resolved that the CSU improve candidate screening by creating a pseudonym system for CV and cover letters, incorporating engaging and interactive assessments during the hiring process, and implement blind interviews for prospective workers and volunteers. Be it further resolved that the CSU executive be tasked with implementing automated shortlisting software that ranks employees and volunteers based on a culmination of factors such as assessment results, blind interview results, work experience, and/or sufficient academic standing. Be it further resolved that the CSU release their own results for diversity, such as BIPOC members of the LGBTQAI plus community, those with disabilities and gender minorities, to stay accountable to the promise of greater diversity and to comfort members in these communities to apply. Be it further resolved that all elected members of the CSU take a comprehensive internal workforce survey in order to research and identify imbalance and disproportional representation, as well as help better the overall satisfaction of those who work and volunteer their time. Be it further resolved that the budgetary impact be decided by Finance Committee and limited to $10,000. So the only line that was changed was in the BIPOC and members of the LGBTQAI plus community paragraph. I changed to gender minorities to stay accountable to the promise of greater diversity.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second for the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Harrison. And Matthew, your motivation.
I also, just to reflect on some of the things that I've seen in council, and I do know that some of these things may not be decided today. This is just an idea. I wanted to get the ball rolling, get ideas flowing for the council going forward. I think there needs to be some changes made when we appoint people and hire people. I think it's a great time to do so when we have an annual campaign that's focusing so much on aspects of discrimination. I think we need to be very careful with how we appoint people and hire people in the CSU. And I think by mimicking very successful hiring and appointing practices of businesses and other non-for-profit organizations, I think we can do a great job going forward. So I really hope to have all your support on this.
All right, thank you. So there is a speakers list. Daniel, go ahead.
So I'm obviously not opposed to the spirit of this motion, but I do wish that this was brought to at least some of the committees before it was brought to council. It wasn't shown to appointments committee, it wasn't shown to policy, it wasn't shown to BIPOC. And also if this includes employees, you would have to talk to QP Local 4512, the employees union, if this is something that is going to be implemented with how they hire their team. So it's unfortunate that this wasn't brought to anybody before council.
Okay, thank you. Howard, go ahead.
Yep. So my concern is, as the appointments committee, we just finished actually yesterday with the interview process. So my question to you, Matthew, is would this impact the interviews that have already been done, or will it be for future interviews and future hiring practices being conducted? Because otherwise we'd have to redo the 50 plus interviews we just finished yesterday.
Matthew, did you want to clarify?
Yeah, so first to address Daniel's comments, I obviously know how long this would take to get into effect and up and running. I know this could possibly take more than a full 6 months to even get going. So the idea of to get the ideas going and maybe to send it in the right direction where the spirit of this motion then could carry on and be developed into something greater. As for Howard's comments, obviously because it would take so long, then it would be only after the process has been decided by the various committees and then go forward from there.
Thank you. Lauren, go ahead.
Can I be put after Paige, please?
Yeah, sure. Paige, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I was just, 1 second here. Okay, so I think equitable hiring practices are entirely necessary, and this does have some good points. While this is so, the pseudonym system, I believe, has weaknesses, as this doesn't keep in mind the systemic barriers that allow more privileged individuals greater chance of opportunities to have and show experiences that give them an advantage to having resume qualities that are then more likely to result in hiring or securing an interview. As well, shortlisting softwares can also have deep biases, as it's humans that program such softwares. Furthermore, this is written from a single person's perspective, and from my understanding, a policy written by a larger and more diverse group, which was brought forward this past May and was approved by the then policy committee at the time, was subsequently voted down by council. A question I have is, why was a policy that was already approved by the previous policy committee abandoned and now a new policy brought in from a much less diversified perspective without consulting more diverse groups?
Matthew, did you want to respond to that?
Oh, for sure. I do want to mention that I consulted various counselors on this, so it's not like I'm coming out of nowhere and just presenting it forward. I also wanted to mention that, like I said before, this isn't meant to be decided on today and implemented today. This was just an idea to possibly send to other groups to look into. When talking about the pseudonym and other strategies, the research was done as to how to get the most merit-based employees and volunteers in an organization. So when I did my research, that was the ambition, and these were the strategies that were given. So when you're actually trying to maximize like the meritocracy in an organization, these were what came up. So that's why I put it in there. Now, I guess it's a matter of opinion whether or not we agree with the strategies, but I just wanted to give some ideas and perhaps send it to policy or other committees to look this over. But I just wanted to have a starting point so that when I mean, it's no surprise to those I've told, when I do resign, there could at least be the ball already rolling, and people who want to champion similar or the same motions can do so afterwards.
Thank you. Lauren, go ahead.
Can I motion to have this be sent to BIPOC committee, policy committee, and appointments committee for review and approval before being presented to council for a final decision, please?
Second.
Seconded by Harrison. Did you want to motivate Lauren?
Well, like, I know, Matthew, you said you consulted multiple counselors. Like, I would have loved to have seen this policy beforehand, because I was really offended by the whole demanding and ambitious and what was the other one, challenging. I don't view those as masculine words, so by implying that they're masculine, that means that they're not feminine. And I was like, oh, I was not really happy to see that line, and I'm sure other women might have been offended as well, and that might have been something that you would have been avoided if you would have talked to more counselors or talked to BIPOC or talked to policy. And anyways, I just think that if you are already saying that this should go through more people and you've admitted that, then I think this should be sent to other committees for approval, especially the committees that this policy is going to be affecting. So I think that we should just cease discussion on this, be efficient, and have it go through the necessary committees for final approval.
Great, thank you. Just a reminder as well to talk about each other in the third person, and I do promise we're going to have a Robert's Rules training in the coming weeks. So the motion on the table is to send it to BIPOC policy, and what was the other one, Lauren?
Appointments.
Appointments, okay. And seconded by Harrison. So that is the current motion on the floor. So I'll just continue with the current speakers list. Eduardo?
Yeah. So I wanted to just echo a lot of what other people have said already. I think that the policy would be difficult to follow from my experience as appointments committee chair. It would definitely be a lot of work. That being said, I still think we should try for something, even if it would be a lot of work. And I don't know if it would completely succeed, just because I'll be honest, we are all students. This is difficult for us to manage these things that are very, very complex. The other thing I wanted to acknowledge is over the past few weeks, months during the summer, we've been accused by students at large of discrimination. We've been accused by counselors of discrimination. And I noticed that this policy lacks one thing, and that's holding actual counselors in the policy. It affects employees, it affects student at large volunteers, but it doesn't actually affect the one thing people have been talking about very much so in the past months, is that council itself seems to be having a root cause of discrimination in it. So personally, what I would like to see in this policy is actually expanded even more so in the committees to include council as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So just a reminder, we're talking about sending it to committee. Not the actual motion itself. So I do see some hands up from the previous motion. So I'll just go through, and if you don't want to talk about that, then we can just pass to the next person. Amma?
Can I please make a point of information if possible?
Yeah,
I would just like to say that the chat should be reserved for council issues. So, the comments that were made, I think, are a little bit inappropriate from a certain council member. So I just wanted to address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Harrison. Sorry, I haven't been looking at the chat, but I just want to remind everyone that the chat shows up when this video is released to the student media, to anyone who wants to see it, basically. So anything that you say is going to be seen by everyone else. If you want to speak to each other in private message, but the chat should only be reserved for council-related things. Sorry, I'm making a speakers list, so I'm not looking at what everyone is saying, so I guess I missed a few things. But just please be respectful to your fellow counselors and to everyone who's going to see this video. Amma, go ahead.
Yes, can I come back? I want to speak on the main motion.
Sure. Sean, go ahead.
Sorry, I'll come back. I wanted to speak on the main motion as well. Sorry.
Okay. Marco?
I think it's a great idea to send it to committee. I wanted to check in and make sure it was sent to policy and BIPOC.
Yep. Cool. Policy, BIPOC, and appointments.
And appointments. Great. That sounds lovely. Especially if, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. Danielle, go ahead.
So I think the motion Matthew brought was awesome. And I think it should be dealt with as soon as possible, just like we dealt with the campaigns as quickly as we could. Because I feel like if we send this to 3 committees, it could take a really long time. And I agree that sending it to committees is really good practice. However, I know it could take a while. So the only way I could be down for this is if we set a time frame for this to be possible, because I think as this is pressing, and as Eduardo talked about, students want to see change for a better non-discriminatory CSU, and this is a way to show them that we care about that. And I think this is a really good step. Doesn't have anything very specific, but a general idea of what the executives could put together for all of the CSU. So I think if we were to send this to policy and all the other committees, just policy maybe I'd be a bit better on it, but it's to 3 committees. I find it could take a while. We're all here now. I think we should be voting on this right now, not later, because it's a pressing issue. However, if we added a time frame, I'd be okay with that. Thank you.
Isaiah, go ahead.
So yeah, I would just make an order to where where the process starts with review, and just to recommend that it start with the BIPOC committee to kind of I think it was Margot, or no, it was Paige who pointed out before that there had been a similar motion that was brought up by the member of the BIPOC community. And this motion doesn't seem to address, as Ed said, certain issues that pertained in that. So by starting from one of the afflicted communities, we can start by addressing their needs, their view on the issue, and bring it towards then appointments who can kind of make amendments based off procedural things, and then top it off with policy to kind of like see, to get it approved and written in stone or standing reg wherever it's supposed to be. So in that order, because like just to avoid some of the concerns, but this is not something that we can rush in and jump in and vote on now, because not enough people were consulted and had their actual views and issues addressed for it to be adopted now, type of thing.
Thank you. Desiree, go ahead.
My mic is not very strong.
Oh yeah, I can't hear you that well.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, I'll have to slightly shout, sorry. Essentially, I'd like to speak in favor of sending this motion to policy, partly because there was a policy on appointments committee and equitable hiring practices that was voted down in
Desiree, you're chopping out.
Yeah, you're dropping in and out.
Mandate actually.
Froze. You're frozen.
Yes. Desiree, can you hear us? Because you're frozen.
Council exactly. And I'll my phone. Sorry.
Oh, sure. Do you want me to put you back on the speakers list? Okay, well, I'll put you back on the speakers list just in case.
I can hear you, but I'll go on my phone.
Okay. Are you back? Desiree, can you hear us again?
She's gone.
Can you hear us, Desiree? Do you want to keep going with your point?
Yeah, thank you. Is everything good now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, I went on my own private internet. My Wi-Fi is really bad. Sorry about that. Essentially, I was just saying that back in the last mandate, just to give some context about this motion that I think is important, in 2019-2020, there was a policy brought to council, policy on appointments committee and equitable hiring practices that was worked on by a very diverse policy committee, some good counselors, and it was brought forward to council and it was voted down actually. And I know a lot of people felt bad about it essentially. And the fact that a new motion is being brought on council, to council to talk about equitable hiring practices when something that was already worked on thoroughly on a year was brought to this exact, well, not this exact same group of people, but you know, a lot of us rolled over to this year, I find is a little disheartening. So I would encourage overall, this is just context, but I would encourage the motion on the table to go to policy committee, and also hopefully policy committee can take into account the policy that was already written by folks that had equitable hiring practices at heart, and that focused also on not just, you know, gender and political, and I forget the exact terms that were used in the motion, sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but that also focused on racial discrimination. So yeah, thanks.
Great, thank you. So our next two speakers are the chairs of policy and appointments, so they might be able to shed some light on the process. Sarah, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Essentially, yeah, I'm just really confused about why this wasn't really brought up with BIPOC committee, also with policy. I just don't think, as we always say, we need proper procedure wasn't followed. My other thing with that too, I guess, is like with the whole computerized system, I just think is completely irrelevant, I guess. And it also really enforces more so of the discrimination that people of color do face on the basis of having for someone to look at your cover letter and your CV. And to me, like in the fact that like this was brought up in May by people of color, and then now why are we bringing it back up again and having it, like, not to be rude, but by a white person versus people of color right now who did it prior. So I'm wondering, like, what's the difference between now and then, because it doesn't look it's insulting, to be honest, at this point, especially if you're saying let's move the process now, like as fast as we can, and then before you didn't move the process. So like with the whole computerized thing, I just find it's highly problematic in my opinion, and it's really not encouraged whatsoever. And I will really say that as like someone who's a part of the BIPOC community, like, no, it's just, I would really shut that down very quickly. But yeah, I just think that like the proper parties were not consulted, and I don't know who the counselors you're referring to are. If you can name them, that'd be great too, so we can see like who did you speak to. But yeah, like I don't know, I just think this motion, I just don't agree with it right now, is all I can say.
Thank you. Were you looking for an answer to your question, Sarah?
No, not really. It was more so a statement, but yeah, actually I would like an answer of like who was consulted, because I'm quite intrigued to know who they were, because I wasn't, Manuela wasn't, we're a part of BIPOC, our committee wasn't consulted, so I'm just wondering who that is.
Matthew, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I had reached out to Margot, Harrison, Amadou, Shivani, a few others as well. I had sent it all to them throughout the summer. I had received feedback. I incorporated the feedback, and then I brought it to council. Obviously, like I said before, I could have brought it to committees. However, I didn't really know what the functioning procedure was with COVID-19, and I just knew that if I put my ideas on a piece of paper for now, it could be sent to the right places after council had a little brief discussion on it, and I could get the rest of thoughts from council, and then just send it in the right direction.
Can that also be clarified by Margot and Shivani and Amma, what the process was, please?
Okay, can one of you just clarify quick?
Yes, I could. Oh.
Yeah, go ahead, Amma.
Oh, fine. I know that Matthew has been working on this motion for the past, almost like since the beginning of his mandate, and so the intention with it was to improve the recruitment process and also bring an objective means to diversify the appointments made by the CSU. So on that standpoint, we really did agree. I had some reservations regarding the motion, especially due to the fact of using a software, because at the time I didn't know which software it was, how the software would account for discrimination, which data we had to measure, and if the software had data to sort of adjust given the current situation we have. I also made requests such as, consulting with Camille and the CSU IT department to also find out how much it will cost us to have such a software. Besides that, I thought that we could also have better means to improve the way we recruit. Doing it this way might be problematic for a small organization such as the CSU, because from what I understood, Matthew, your main source of inspiration was bigger corporations or NGOs. So I wasn't really certain if we could bring this forward. Did you get to consult with Camille and sort of deepen the research on this?
I don't want to go too far into the questions and answers. Sorry about that, Amma. Just because we have a speakers list and we're running out of time. Although the question is valid, we can deal with it on the speakers list.
I just mention one thing that is important regarding the software. The reason the hesitations were brought forward regarding the software and how it could pose as an issue, that's why I actually said in the motion itself, be it further resolved that the CSU executive be tasked with implementing this, because I actually do have a lot of faith in the CSU executive. If this were to be implemented, that they could be the ones to design the software. And I think that they would be a strong team to actually implement this. And that's why I didn't want to just throw a potential software to some random IT department to like design the criteria and have it come from the CSU executive. So that's why I worded it that way, so that the hesitation could at least be mitigated a little bit in that aspect.
All right, thank you. Daniel, go ahead.
I just want to address concerns about the rush to have to deal with this. Like Howard said originally, we just finished interviews yesterday and we're going to be discussing the people tomorrow. So after that, like there wouldn't really be a rush to have this done. So there's no issue with having to talk to the committees about this. If there is a big issue and nobody really wants to talk to the committees, we could just bring this just to policy, and the chairs of BIPOC and appointments can go, and also all the members of both those committees can just attend the policy committee. That way it's just one meeting. But again, like I feel like that's just details, so I don't think it needs to be discussed right now. I just think that this shouldn't be passed today without talking to anybody, any of the executives or anything, who would actually have to implement this. Because as it stands right now, and I mean, Matthew agreed with this, like we have to talk about this like outside of council. So it's kind of just inefficient, irresponsible to just vote on this right now.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point, we're a little bit past our 20 minutes, and the motion on the table is to defer this agenda point to BIPOC Policy and Appointments Committee. Is there anyone who wants to continue the discussion, or should we move to a vote?
I have a question.
Yes.
Related to the wording of the motion.
Yes.
I just want to ask, I'm just curious, what exactly about the words ambitious, challenging, and demanding, in your opinion, Matthew, makes those words masculine? I'm just wondering your perspective.
Oh, my personal perspective on this, I disagree with it. However, when I was doing my research into what successful businesses do in their hiring practices to encourage diversity, I noticed that the commonality was gender decoders when they set up their I guess like the preview or abstract portion of a certain position. So like my personal opinion's irrelevant here. This is just what I saw, and I wanted to like copy down like what I saw was common across most of the strategies that are used by these big organizations. So that was the motivation behind it.
Right, thank you.
Okay, question.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Can I say, it was said that I was consulted, but can I specify something? Because I think that's important.
Just before that, is everyone okay with an extra 5 minutes of discussion, or just getting through the last 4 people on the speakers list?
Yeah, I'd like to oppose that.
Okay.
You know what? Never mind. If it's just, can we exhaust the list or whatever it's called?
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's 4 people left. You're one of them, Hirsch. So we'll just go through that, and then we'll be good to vote. Margot, go ahead.
Yeah, so I dropped the ball and did not read the documents that were sent to me for consultation until the council docs were sent out. And then I messaged my fellow councillor and disagreed with all aspects of it and recommended that it be sent to BIPOC committee and policy committee. Just to be clear, the consultation process was a consultation, and I appreciate that happening, but it was just that, and my recommendations were not taken into account. So.
Thank you for clarifying. Lauren, go ahead.
Like, can I call the question, or like Howard, did you still want to talk?
Just a quick question for Matthew or anyone who can answer. Is there a ballpark estimate for how much the software would cost to implement?
Matthew, did you want to respond?
What I saw, they range from a few $100s to a few $1,000s. So that's why at the last be it further resolved, I said it would be decided by finance committee with a limit of 10,000. I mean, obviously I don't expect union to spend $10,000, but I just wanted to leave it up to finance committee to see what they consider reasonable for something like that.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point, we've exhausted the speakers list. So the motion on the floor is to send it to BIPOC Policy and Appointments Committees. So if you're voting yes, you want to defer it to those 3 committees. If you're voting no, you do not. And if you're abstaining, you are abstaining. First of all, are there any oppositions? Just to see if we can pass it unanimous.
Opposition.
Okay, so I'll go through the list. And we'll do the roll call vote. Diana, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Harrison?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Danielle?
No.
Thank you. Matthew K?
Yes.
Thank you. Chelsea? Chelsea? We'll skip. Howard, go ahead.
I vote yes.
Yes. Jeremiah?
Abstain.
Abstain. Lauren?
Yes.
Yes. Zachary?
Yes.
Yes. Arye? Arye? We'll pass.
Where are you?
Oh, yes. What's your vote?
No, I was joking, saying where are you? Like,
Okay. Sarah?
Yes. Yes.
Margot?
Yes.
Yes. Shivani?
Yes.
Yes. Amma?
Yes.
Yes. Marlena?
Yes.
Yes. Chris K?
no.
No. Chris D?
Yes.
Yes. Matthew B?
Yes.
Yes. Sean?
Yes.
Yes. Paige?
Yes.
Yes. Anais?
Yes.
Yes. James? James? We'll pass. Desiree?
Yes.
Yes. Hirsch? Hirsch? Okay. Chelsea, James, or Hirsch, are you there to vote? Okay. So if not, I will call the vote then with a tally of 10, 15, 17 yes, 2 no, and 1 abstention. The vote carries, so the motion will be sent to BIPOC Policy and Appointments Committee.
Caitlin?
Yes?
Sorry for the interruption, but Hirsch, he let us know that he's took a break from council right now to do his prayers.
Oh, okay, perfect, thank you. That is noted. And Victoria or Isaiah, did you want to speak to this?
No, it's for something unrelated.
Okay, that's fine. Did you want to speak on like now or for the next point?
Well, for now, Jeremiah, if you do not identify as she, her, can you please remove it from your name in the, okay, it's done. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much. Victoria? Okay, so if there's nothing further, we can move on to point number 7, which is extremist condemnation, with 2 motions submitted by Matthew and Harrison. Whichever one of you wants to start.
Matt?
Yeah, so first I kind of just want to open the floor to an idea just because presentations were prepared to discuss far-right groups such as the KKK and Unite the Right. However, if some people feel uncomfortable with a presentation being given on these groups, I would move straight to the motion and then we could vote straight on that. But I would just want to know if a presentation is needed to be given on these groups. I think we can all acknowledge the horror and just the sheer horror of these groups. And I personally would not want to give a presentation on these 2 groups if I don't need to. So I just wanted to know if we can move straight to the motion.
Is everyone okay with moving straight to the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I don't think we need to do anything triggering if we don't need to, definitely. So Matthew, the floor is yours.
Whereas the KKK, Ku Klux Klan, and Unite the Right are examples of alt-right groups inspired by white supremacy, hate, and physical violence, perpetuated by restricting free speech and freedom in general, it should read. Whereas the Concordia Student Union must protect student rights by creating a safe space for all of its members, as well as denounce all forms of hate speech and avoid any instances of discrimination. Be it resolved, the Concordia Student Union condemn the KKK and Unite the Right for racial-inspired violence and hate speech through a public statement. Be it further resolved that all associated activism groups with identical goals and ideologies be condemned by the Concordia Student Union. Be it further resolved the budgetary impact of this motion is nil.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second for the motion?
Second.
Harrison, second. And your motivation, Matthew?
I mean, I said the motivation before. I was at the end of my presentation. I just said, this is the time to call out every group, whether past, present, or going into the future. These two groups are evil. They have no place on our campus. Even if one student shared a similar ideological mindset of these two groups, we'd be doing the students a disservice by not calling them out and condemning them. I want this done now. I think the time is now, and I think we should do that.
All right, thank you. Isaiah, go ahead.
I appreciate the sentiment of the motions of condemning, but I would feel more comfortable if the council took, similar to as we saw at the beginning of the meeting with the denial of the Holocaust, if we took a more broader stance on the issue, because as it stands right now, there's, from my recollection in even what's left of the positions book, there's no general stance on anti-racism itself. There was a police brutality, and I believe it was a very specific case. Rather going and pinpointing organizations, I think it's more powerful as an organization if the CSU takes a stance of denouncing the practices of anti-racism, of hate speech, and the whole kit and caboodle, so that we can avoid, like right now as it stands, this is for all intents and purposes just a motion. I think it should be more, especially with the Black Lives Matter campaign, it should be more towards a referendum to take a solid position on the issue rather than looking to condemn specific organizations within the whole spectrum of the thing. I think it's better to take a stance on anti-racism in general, like in support of anti-racism. Yeah, so not racism, and then and like going from there so that we can then make more stringent policies within the organization as to what we define as anti-racism, what we define as hate speech in there. But it should start with more so of a position from my point of view.
Okay, thank you.
Can I have a direct, am I allowed to a direct response to that? Just to like.
No, it wasn't really a question, but I can put you on the speakers list if you're
awesome
with that. Nicole, go ahead.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm here as the campaigns coordinator, also a member at large. I just want to kind of echo what Isaiah said. I would also add that, like, as somebody who has been involved in like community activism and who's like pretty familiar with different far-right movements, like it does seem a little weird to, even though I really appreciate this motion is a great idea, I think. I do agree that it should be broader, especially considering at Concordia, like the KKK and Unite the Right, well, Unite the Right, I guess, to an extent, but the KKK hasn't really been like the far right group that we've had a problem with at Concordia. It's been mainly like the Proud Boys and various alt-right groups. So I would say that I'd agree with Isaiah. Like obviously the KKK is terrible and we should condemn them, but I would agree with Isaiah that there are a lot of different groups here, and rather than pinpointing like specific groups, it might be better to just, you know, like condemn the far right or far right ideologies or racist ideologies. But I do think the far right is a specific thing. I definitely think we need to have positions against racism, but the far right is also very specific. So I think we should condemn that as well, because the far right is not only racist, they're also like misogynistic, homophobic, like they're oppressive in multiple ways. And they are definitely a threat, like in terms of violence. So I would definitely support that type of motion. Obviously, I don't have a vote, but I would support that type of motion as someone within the CSU.
All right, thank you. Lauren, go ahead.
Sorry, I just have a quick question. Who just spoke?
Yes.
I don't know the name of the person who just spoke. I missed that, so sorry.
Oh, it's Nicole LeBlanc.
Nicole LeBlanc. Okay, thank you so much. Sorry.
Thank you. And Lauren, go ahead.
I agree. Like, I just want to point out that the CSU doesn't have a religious affiliation, and so I don't believe that the CSU should have a political affiliation as well by condemning political groups. But I do agree with the notion that like we should condemn things such as racism, hate speech, violence, and like white supremacy, and we can make a general position that attacks those social issues without politically aligning ourselves against student at-larges that might be affiliated with these groups, because at the end of the day we don't want to alienate our student body that does support these things, because we are supposed to remain a neutral party, but we can still say that we're against racism, white supremacy, and hate speech. And I think we should just broaden this motion and go from there, and hopefully someone after me can say send this to policy committee or something like that to formulate that position.
Thank you. Danielle, go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I want to clarify is there is still a position in the positions book about racism. That's all.
Thank you. Chris K.
I never thought I would live to see the day that the CSU can't condemn the KKK. Like, this is probably the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I've just seen the general coordinator of the CSU refuse to condemn the KKK because there's something else we could be doing. That's a ridiculous reason to not condemn the KKK. Yeah, this is insane. Like, I have a feeling, and I'm just going to be blunt, that the person proposing the motion and not the content of the motion is the issue here.
Okay, don't speculate on people's motives, Chris.
Well, I said what I said, and that's the end of my speaking turn.
Margot, go ahead.
Yeah, I really don't think that Isaiah was refusing to condemn the KKK, and I think that's really messed up of you to say. Just like, that's totally fucked.
Tone it
anyways, I think I have a couple of amendments that might be friendly, and I also agree that we do need to have a explicitly anti-racist position on the books past a referendum. But let me just pull up. I made some changes and I sent them to.
Can I make just a quick direct comment, because the first RCN, there was a anti-racism motion that was passed by Chelsea, myself, and Shivani, and I definitely want to expand on that and add other things. I'm totally not opposed to doing that at a future meeting. I just want to say that for the
thanks for clarifying. Yeah, Margot, I think there is, and a couple other people said it. There was an anti-racism motion that was passed in June, I think.
Yeah.
Or positions, right?
It needs to be passed through referendum.
Yes.
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry if that was not clear. But I I sent the proposed changes to Matthew. So let me know if it's friendly. And I'll send them to the group as well. Let me just pull them up. Sorry. My computer is extremely slow.
Did you want to go through them now?
Yeah, can I pitch for some friendly amendments just to add basically sorry, give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, sure.
To condemn all alt-right and white supremacist groups.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. As long as there's like wording and stuff that you have.
Yeah, I do. I'll just send it to the group. Give me a second. There we go. Those are just like small wording changes. So it's not just being like only the KKK and Unite the Right are bad. It's like all white supremacist groups are bad. Yeah, thoughts?
did you want to just read like the proposed amendments themselves, and then we can get a second
Yeah.
and vote on those and all that?
So whereas the KKK, Ku Klux Klan, and Unite the Right are examples of alt-right white supremacist groups which inflict hate and physical violence perpetuated by restricting free speech and freedom in general, whereas the student union must protect students' rights by creating a safe space for all its members, as well as denounce all forms of hate speech, white supremacy, racism, and stand against discrimination. Be it further resolved, be it resolved, the student union condemn the KKK, Unite the Right, and all alt-right and white supremacist groups for their white supremacist ideologies, violence and hate speech through a public statement. Be it further resolved that all alt-rights and white supremacist groups be condemned by the student union. Be it further resolved, the budgetary impact of this motion is nil.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, is there a second for the amendment specifically?
Second for the amendments to the motion.
Okay, thank you. And Margot, you can motivate and kind of explain.
Yeah, basically I think it broadens the ideas that we're trying to place ourselves. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a brain fog moment right now.
That's all good. We can. Do you want to keep going? Like we can come back to you, or
I can rally myself. Sorry. Yeah, we're not condemning only these specific and awful groups. We're condemning white supremacy and racism in general, and that's pretty much all. Also, some like small wording changes, but yeah.
Is there any opposition to these amendments to the motion? Okay, so they can be considered friendly, and we can move on with the speakers list. Isaiah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. One, I don't appreciate the insinuation that the general coordinator is refusing to condemn, or no, let me correct myself. The Black general coordinator is refusing to condemn the KKK, because as a person of color, an American person of color who's had insinuations, who's had experiences with racism and discrimination, it turns my stomach. But what I'm doing is looking from a broad perspective for the organization, and it's too finite to go pick two out of the unfortunately, probably hundreds of groups that discriminate, that attack, and that kill Black people. So I'm going to say this one last time, because I said it nicely so many times before in previous council meetings, and I'm apologizing for my tone because it could be perceived as being emotional, unprofessional, and anything in between. But please, for my sake, for your fellow counselors' sake, for everybody's sake, for every student, for every person, think about what comes out of your mouth before you say it, because it has an effect on people. Unfortunately, we're not in a context where we can come together after the meeting and have a debrief. I know if even if I try to call some people or whatnot, it might be seen as, oh, I'm in a nuisance and annoyance or whatnot, but it's not okay. It hurts. And so if you're gonna make an insinuation based off something so important, we're the point where we couldn't even get on the same page to support a movement to save my people. But the moment that I want to think about the organization from a broad perspective, I'm sorry, that's it.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, go ahead. You're next on the speakers list, Sarah.
You know, I guess in a more broader perspective of what's going on here, I think that, like, I'm not even gonna lie, as a council, this is very disappointing, and it makes me uncomfortable at the fact that this is even for somebody to call a Black person like kind of like a supporter of the KKK essentially. And to be honest, like, you should be taken to the judicial board at this point, because like to me this is just so shocking, and it makes me as academic and advocacy coordinator, as even my job, like what the hell are you doing? Because like it makes no sense. And I'm sorry, but this is like, what do you want Black people to do at this point? Like, do you want us to like start picking cotton or something again? Because this makes no sense. I'm sorry, but like if I have to hear this one more time, I swear, like I don't know. And it's so heartbreaking that this is a cycle we have to repeat over and over and over again. And you just made, like, honestly, it's just so upsetting. And every one of you who's denouncing these things and like starting from May, like maybe think about the actions that you've done. It's similar to what's happening in the States. This is Canada, for crying out loud. We have a charter that's made to like represent people and like different and all multifacets and multiculturalism, and you have to do this to someone who is a minority. Really think about it for yourself here. And to me, it's just quite frank, so disappointing. And even our own university is doing this. So what are we going to do to help make the students a lot more better? What are we going to do as a council? That's what we need to start thinking about today, and not about should we pass like equity seats? Should we do this? It should be explanatory. Yes, we should be doing this. And so to me, this is just so disappointing, and it's not a union I would personally want to work for if this is going to keep happening, because it's really deteriorating at my soul that I have to do this for a year and hear this all the time. I could be at another university doing the same thing and for them not to treat me this way. I am not proud of this council whatsoever. For some of you, this is not correct. And I'm sorry if like this is coming out aggressive, but I truly mean it. Shame on most of you for doing some of these things, and you know who you are. So maybe reevaluate the whole situation of what you're doing and while you're here, because those consequences will come and nip you in the butt sometime soon. Get ready when someone's your boss and they're Black. What are you gonna do?
Hey, Caitlin, can we keep this on track, please? This is
Sorry, I'm not going to interrupt.
Sorry, I don't want to sound rude.
Their discrimination. I'm sorry that I'm not going to do that. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, like.
All right, thank you. So yeah, I think this is a really good reminder that we need to really think before we speak, and just some things that we might not think have emotion and connotation attached to them really do to other folks. So I really just want us to keep that in mind when we're speaking. Howard, go ahead.
Just a question directed for Matthew. When you said be resolved that all associated activism groups with identical goals and ideologies be condemned, do you mean as in the CSU would vote to condemn them, or what would the process be to condemn these associated activism groups? Just curious on that.
Sorry, it's just a lot to keep up with. What I meant by writing, be it further resolved that all associated activism groups with identical goals and ideologies be condemned by the CSU. I did mean like with what Margot wrote as the amended version. That's what I had meant, that all associated groups with like white supremacist based ideologies be condemned. So like that's what I tried to do originally. Maybe it didn't come across that way in the wording, but that's how like I wanted it to come across. So I apologize if it came across as too like finite in the approach, but I really tried to cover all the other bases by saying all associated activism groups with identical goals and ideologies.
All right, thank you. Amma, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I would like to echo the words of Isaiah and Sarah. I think that their reaction hasn't been emotional and has been the appropriate one, given the utter misplacement of this statement. I mean, it's, folks, please, whenever you speak, please think again of your words. Your words clearly have an effect on people. I do not know if these statements are made for fun. I do not know if it's made to make a good point, but it does not make sense. And you are clearly affecting people that have been personally traumatized by real facts. This is not a game on the internet. We're not here making these Zoom calls. Everybody's behind their cameras, and then we can just say whatever they want, whatever you want. Please think again at what you're saying. I'll echo again the words of Isaiah and Sarah. I think they put my point across really well. And I think if you're a decent human being, you should apologize to both of them, because what you just said is really hurtful and really not funny, in my opinion. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Eduardo, go ahead.
Yeah. So I just wanted to take a moment to talk about the communication department and how we normally respond to things. People obviously message the Facebook page, the social medias quite often for us to condemn certain things, to us to support certain things. And it's very hard for us always to pick out one thing in particular and say, we're going to support or we're going to condemn X. Because the minute we do that, a lot of other people choose to say, oh, if you've condemned X, now you by default, you have to condemn Y. So in my personal time as a student life coordinator and the supervisor of the communications department, I've always taken rather motions, movements, and supported that instead. So instead of saying, in this example, instead of saying something like I condemn KKK, we condemn racism in general. That becomes a lot more easier to manage as a communications department, because the minute we start picking groups, people are going to say, what about this group? What about that group? What about this group? And it becomes very tricky, because then people have to start drawing lines where lines might be difficult to draw on some of the more controversial issues. And I'm not talking KKK, because everyone could agree that KKK is obviously awful. But some of the more ones, so like, let's say Trump, for example, is Trump racist? Some people are going to say no. Some people are going to say yes, he's very racist. But my personal thing is I don't have to say my personal thing, because I'm the coordinator of the student union. Therefore, I have to remain neutral and say whatever the students say. That being said, someone's going to have to make a decision, and that's very hard for some people to make, because they're going to upset students. So in general, it's easier for us to just condemn a certain thing like racism in general. All that being said, I would like to also say, in the previous agenda point, I mentioned how discrimination was something that came up often in the summer, how students have said that council was being discriminatory. I think this is proof of what I said in the previous motion. And this is why I think it's very important that whenever policies we're passing, take into account this, because as you could see, people do get extremely upset. And it's very odd for me to have to come in and start mediating between people and calling people and say, hey, listen, calm down, because this is not right what you're doing. Because as you could see, people get upset, they storm out of meetings, rightfully so, because they are being personally accused of horrible things. I would keep that in mind. I really don't know what else to say about it, other than I think there is quite a bit of discrimination in council from certain councillors. I wish I could say stronger words, but I will not say stronger words, because it's not, because. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I have a point of personal privilege? Can we take a break so the people who had to step out can have a moment, and we can all sort of take a breath, because that was,
I think that's a good suggestion.
really disgusting.
Are we good with a 5 to 10 minute recess?
Perfect.
Let's do 10 minutes. Is that okay?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, 10 minutes. Okay, so we'll reconvene in 10 minutes. Thank you very much, folks.
Bye, guys.
All right, folks, are we good to start back up in a couple of minutes?
Yep.
I'm here.
Okay, we'll just give it a minute or so.
Can I just make one small suggestion? Could you
Yeah, sure.
maybe, if someone goes off from the actual like motion, could you maybe cut them off to avoid any sort of conflict? Because just I
Yeah, I'll address that in a second.
yeah, because nothing should have gotten that emotional in my opinion. Like in some things that were said.
I think that's enough. I don't I don't think you should be policing people's emotional reaction to
No,
racism.
not that. The first thing.
Oh,
Not,
okay, cool.
not the reaction.
Cool. Thank you.
I'm sorry if I said made it ambiguous. I just didn't want to call anyone specific out.
Let me find my handy Robert's rules. Just to read you all my favorite quote. All right, folks, are we good to reconvene? Okay, so it is 8:16. Just a couple things about kind of decorum during debate. Once again, I know I haven't given the Robert's Rules training yet. That is to come. And I think I read this out last year as well. Just there's a whole section in Robert's Rules about how to debate using the proper decorum. So one of the things is confining remarks of the merits to the pending question. So in debate, a member's remarks must be germane to the question before the assembly. That I think I've said a couple times. At the same time, one of the other things is refraining from attacking a member's motive. So when a question is pending, a member can condemn the nature or likely consequences of the proposed measure in strong terms, but must avoid personalities and under no circumstances can attack or question the motives of another member. So whether it's for, against, whatever, just I want us to talk about the question and not about whoever is suggesting the motion or the resolution that's currently on the table. So we're not to speculate about why people are doing this. It's really just about the question on the table at the moment, which currently is the amended motion that Matthew had proposed and Margot had amended. So I'll continue with these.
Can I a point of personal privilege?
Yes.
Can we post the amended version in the chat?
Oh, it is. If you scroll up, Margot had posted it.
I can't see anything from earlier than I rejoined the room.
Oh, apologies. Let me go and find that for you then.
I posted.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so there it is. Matthew B., you're next on the speakers list.
So I just want to make a small amendment to it where in the second whereas, where it's listing things, I'm just wondering if we can add national supremacy as well as the racial supremacy stuff. Just that way, if it's right wing that takes place in say the context of a country versus a country, it'll also be included.
Okay, is there a second to add national supremacy as well? After, I presume, white supremacist. So it would read and all right and white supremacist and national supremacist groups.
Can I say something?
After I get a second for it. Matthew, is that what your intention was?
Yeah, just add it really after any comma, it works.
Okay, perfect. Is there a second to add that?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Jeremiah. Do you want to motivate, Matthew?
Yeah, it's just that say we have a lot of foreign students here, and just in case there is some rivalry, like for example, Tibetan and Chinese students have a history of problems with each other in universities. It's just so it's by default already encompassed in this motion.
Great, thank you. Harrison, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to express my support for the amendment that was brought forward by Margot, and I'd like to also make a comment, if possible, regarding the incident that happened, because I do have my name on this motion. So I want to say that first of all, the amendment is positive. I think it's necessary and good, and just what happened about half an hour ago, let's say 40 minutes ago, in my opinion at least, was shouldn't be tolerated. Those types of comments that were made should not be tolerated regarding specific individuals. And as someone who's bringing this motion with Matthew, we're bringing it forward in good spirit, and the amendment is great. And yeah, I just wanted to say to apologize to the general coordinator, because on behalf of the council, because really I think it's necessary. And I would like to also yield to Lauren. I don't know if she's next on the speakers list.
Yeah, she is. All right, thank you. There was something I had to say. Oh yes, sorry, the amendment that Matthew had made, is there any opposition to adding that? Okay, so we'll move on to the speakers list. That is considered friendly and adopted via unanimity. Lauren, go ahead.
I would like to motion for this to be sent to BIPOC committee. I know that everyone's kind of in favor of these amendments, but I think it should go through BIPOC committee first. And I talked to Sarah and Isaiah, and they kind of agreed with me that they'd like this to go through BIPOC committee as well. I would love to hear their thoughts, because I really think that we should follow their lead on what they want to do with this motion. And if sending it to BIPOC is the right decision, then I think we should send it to BIPOC, and also task BIPOC committee with creating a position against white supremacy and hate speech and the other social issues that are being addressed in this motion.
Okay, so what I have currently is be resolved that this be deferred to BIPOC committee, and then be it further resolved that BIPOC committee be tasked with developing a position against white supremacy, hate speech, and what was the last thing?
Whatever else is encompassed in this motion, I guess violence and.
Okay, is there a second for that?
Second.
Second by Diana. Do you want to motivate, Lauren?
I just think that this is a really heated thing, and before we do decide anything, we obviously don't need to decide it tonight, but anything in discrimination and white supremacy and affecting minorities obviously should go through BIPOC. So if there's no real rush on this motion, I don't see why we need to decide this tonight, and I think we should have the full backing of the BIPOC committee first before anything.
Great, thank you. Okay, so just to move this along a little bit, because we do have another motion under this agenda point, is everyone okay with just finishing up the 4 speakers? We're talking about deferring it to, by 4 speakers, I mean the 4 individuals with their hands up. Is that okay? Okay, Desiree, go ahead.
I yield.
Sorry?
She yields.
Oh, okay, thank you, sorry. Amma, go ahead.
Oh, Iverson.
Okay, James? James?
Can I call the question?
Oh, just one more. Is one more speaker okay?
Sure.
We're just finishing up the list. Okay, Isaiah, go ahead.
So yeah, I just want to, well, I have a toxic trait of apologizing. I'm apologizing for any unprofessional behavior or whatever may have perceived before. It was just like us all. I am human. You are human.
Never apologize.
Okay. Thank you. And in line with that, thank you for all the support those of you have shown me in checking up on. I am doing fine, and I'm going to resume the rest of the meeting. I would just like to echo what Lauren Lauren said, in the sense of like, with motions like this, and what I was trying to get to with my former point to avoid any confusion, is it's really important to kind of like consult and work with the communities afflicted before taking actions or statements, because we had situations like what Ed has mentioned on the executive side, where people, like, once the student union makes a stance or condemns an action, it becomes a slippery slope, and then we have to condemn everything. And so it's like, I think that the most effective way to show support or take a stance is by referendum and polling and asking students to kind of like just ensure that we are like, this is the stance we're taking, and the reason why is because students said so, type of thing. So that's just my take on it.
All right, thank you. And just to qualify that a bit, folks, there's nothing wrong with having an emotional response to a question or to speak passionately in your debate. What the issue is in debate is just not to attack other people's motives is all. So don't ever apologize for being passionate about a subject or anything like that. Okay, so with that, we've finished the speakers, and we can move to a
James
vote.
has his hand up, Caitlin.
Oh, sorry, James. Oh, you'd spoken before. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Can I just add something before we go on to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so like Isaiah touched upon something that I've been kind of thinking about a lot of the motions that were presented today, in that I'm not a big, like, a lot of the motions that are presented today, are kind of like without any real like teeth behind them. Like, and what I say by that, it's like, oh, well, CSU is going to make a statement. This person is going to make a statement. And I think we're all down to, pardon the language, calling the KKK a bunch of fuck nuggets. But like, yeah, the CSU makes a statement like on its page, basically saying what 99.999999999% of, like, except for maybe one student in the entirety of Concordia, agrees with. I mean, it's great. Like, we put out a statement saying we don't like the alt-right and the KKK and all this other stuff, but like, I don't like it. Like, I mean, I'll vote for it, but I also like don't see a lot of practical stuff coming out of it, other than, like, I mean, for example, if we start writing a policy, for instance, which I think is part of Lauren's motion, that like is a much more positive step, I think. And I do agree with a lot of people that said, well, it's like just condemning individual groups is kind of odd, because at that point what you're doing is you're just playing whack-a-mole, right, with different types of groups. Oh, like, the KKK, we whack that group, and then a new group comes out and we just have to whack that other one. And it's more useful to, like, voice an opposition to like principles rather than just like individual groups. I just think that's a bit more useful. But like, obviously, fuck the KKK, right? So
Okay. Yes, Isaiah?
Can you just repeat the motion on the table?
Yep. I'll just read it back. So whereas the KKK and Unite the Right are examples of alt-right white supremacist groups which inflict hate and physical violence perpetuated by restricting free speech and freedom in general, whereas the CSU must protect student rights by creating a safe space for all its members, as well as denounce all forms of hate speech, white supremacy. Then we had added national supremacy, racism, and stand against discrimination. Be it resolved that Concordia Student Union condemned the KKK, Unite the Right, and all alt-right, and then national supremacist and white supremacist groups for white supremacist violence and hate speech through a public statement. Be it further resolved that all alt-right and white supremacist groups be condemned by the CSU. Be it further resolved the budgetary impact of this motion is nil. All good?
So I
Wait,
guess
what are we voting on?
The thing I just said.
What about my motion that sends it to BIPOC?
Sorry. Sorry, yes, you were very right. Sorry, the motion on the table is to send all of that to BIPOC committee. And then it was sorry, Lauren, that was not great of me. It was be it resolved that that motion be sent to BIPOC committee, and then be it further resolved that white supremacy, hate speech, national supremacy, and violence, that a position be drafted by BIPOC committee against those things.
Perfect.
Sorry, that was my mistake. Is everyone good with what we're voting on, or everyone understands? Okay, perfect. Oh yeah, here, I will, people were telling me to post this in the group, so I will.
No.
There we go. So that,
Jeremiah, please refrain from making cat noises.
yes, please keep the discussion and all noises professional. Yeah,
It
so that's,
wasn't a cat noise. I was just mocking someone I know.
okay, well, please don't do that either. So that is the motion that's in the chat. We're all good to vote on it. So first of all, is there any opposition to the motion that's in the chat right now? Okay, so if not, that is adopted unanimously. Is there anything further to add on this? Okay, so if not, we'll move to Harrison's motion, which is the second one under.
Right, could I'm just wondering, so to rescind this, or to take this off the agenda, what is needed to do that?
Oh, you just have to say that you want to rescind the motion is all.
So Matt and I would like to rescind the motion.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
And as always, any motion that's rescinded or voted down can always be brought back at another meeting if you want to make changes to it or anything. So now we are at 8, which is the Anti-Sexual Harassment Initiative. And Matthew, this one is yours.
Perfect. Give me 1 second. I do have an amended version of this, so I'll just read it out and then I'll say the difference. Whereas Concordia has had a problem where women and other students have been approached by males who try to use luring tactics or inappropriate language or conduct with students. Whereas the CSU has a duty to protect its members to the best of their abilities, whereas some steps have been taken to tackle this issue such as increased security and security walking students to desired locations. Now, this is the additional part. Be it resolved that the CSU will pursue the creation of a new service in the form of a CSU Anti-Sexual Violence Center that will be independent from the administration. However, the CSU will accept further resources and aid from the administration upon the CSU's request. Be it further resolved that this initiative also be created with the spirit of connecting individuals who share similar views on the state of sexual harassment at Concordia. Be it further resolved that the budgetary impact of this motion be decided by Finance Committee and limited to a total cost of $5,000. So
Thank you. Do we have a second? Oh, just second first. Do we have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Second.
Matthew B. Matthew K, your motivation.
Yeah, since I could remember being an undergrad student in my first semester, I've had to hear from friends that have been approached by by males who are, saying inappropriate things, asking inappropriate things, flat out telling them to come with them. They're just very, very scary things that no student should ever experience. And I do know that these problems have gotten increasingly worse as grad progressed. And although I've seen some steps taken by asking and just, poking around what's going, I do think that if there was a student-led initiative on this where students can get involved and help other students, I feel like it would help students connect better on this issue. But moreover, I think it would actually be more like pragmatic in tackling the issue itself, because you'll have people that are actually engaged as opposed to like told to, that's part of their daily job for the security. I think if it was students doing this, I think they'd be a lot more passionate about it. And I think that we'd see better results come out of it.
Thank you. Amma, go ahead.
I just have a question regarding the motion. Can I ask it to directly or?
Yep.
My colleague, are we going to train students to do this? Because it can be very, I think these kinds of stuff can be very tricky in the sense that if there has to be a full program, right, on how to train, first, how to recruit the right students, how to train them, and then who to dispatch them with. Was there any sort of research, even inside of council, on how we could make that happen? Because this is a very sensitive topic. It involves a lot of, it's very tricky, right? So was that taken into account?
Matthew, did you want to respond?
Yeah, so I had basically spoken to a lot of people. I actually called, I actually called the university to see if there's steps being taken on their end with this. Obviously, I got a very typical administration answer, which is that they're always working on these issues and that it's very important to them. And as such, I didn't really get an answer that I was looking for in that aspect. And I do know that if this initiative stemmed from the student union and really like a group of people champion this initiative going forward, I think it would not only be done faster than the administration, it would be done more comprehensively. And I think there would actually be like more transparency and accountability with this program, because there would be so many involved people who are passionate kind of making sure that everything is done properly. So to answer your question more specifically, I guess nothing had been done in terms of like creating a metric or a system for this, but I kind of just wanted to leave it open for the CSU or council to develop, or committees to develop, the best way that they saw fit so that they could send it into the best direction, just because I'm not really sure where the best endpoint or even starting point is. I just know that it has to start with a talk in this meeting.
All right, thank you. Hirsch, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm actually looking up at a legal document right now. So can I just move a little bit lower on the speakers list? I'm looking for a particular subsection.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I can put you after like 2 or 3 people if that's fine. Diana, go ahead.
Yeah, I was looking at part of the motion and it talked about creating an initiative where students can connect that have similar experiences. I was just wondering if that part could be reworked to take into account SARC, the Sexual Assault and Resource Center that's existed for the last 2 years, because they have volunteers and a therapist there who help students with these issues, but they do also have like group programs as well where students can like come and connect about like this specific issue, and it's generally very broad in terms of sexual harassment. It's targeted towards women, but they are like very open about like other people coming in as well. So maybe part of that, instead of creating a new initiative, like could be used to further support SARC, because they're already doing work that's basically this, and they're doing very good work. And I know they are like, they want to add a second therapist and want to do more. So instead of creating something new from scratch, we could support what they're already doing if we can, because they also really need support. Yeah.
Did you want to make that an official amendment, or it was just a suggestion?
I'm not sure like how I might like word it. Perhaps somebody who's like done things before could help me with the wording, but I would like to change.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
It can be like we can discuss it.
Okay, great.
Lauren, go ahead.
I know this is a really big project that you want to take on. So I was just curious, like, it's a question for Matthew. Like, have you asked anyone from the executive team or consulted the executive team on who's going to be taking on this project? Because it seems like a lot of work and is like who, like we're adding to their workload. So shouldn't we be considerate and ask them like if they're willing to take this on?
Matthew, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, so I think like I've said about several of the motions up here, I kind of just wanted to leave the floor open to whoever wanted to pick it up from here, just because I am resigning in the coming days. So, I mean, like I said earlier, if someone wants to take this on, that's on them. If a group wants to take it on, that would be great. I just want to make sure that this gets into the right hands of people that actually know where to bring this forward from here. I just know that if I had another year, let's just say, or another 9 months, I know that I would have the time and be able to connect all those dots. But I do know that like there are ways to go about this. And I think that the people that want to get this done would get this done. So I didn't actually consult the executive about which specific people would get this done. And but I do know that, you know, if they like the idea, they'll be able to do it.
Great, thank you. Desiree, go ahead. Desiree?
Sorry, can you come back to me? Oh,
Sure, no problem. Isaiah, go ahead.
So thank you, Lauren. You touched upon a bit of what I wanted to say in the sense of like, when it comes to, because it's one thing when it comes to like, we did the lawyer training in the sense of like, of the roles of directors and the roles of executive and all that good stuff. But this motion in itself is very operational at its core. So I guess in the future, whenever, like if you have something that you want to accomplish, if you have something you want to do, the best practice is to really just come and see myself or one of the executive teams to kind of like see like, to point you in the right direction, because I'm not exactly sure who Matthew you called to get your information or to see what the possibilities were, but we have those contacts, we have those meetings, and we have conversations about these sensitive issues and the different solutions to know what's going on. So like whenever you guys want, if you have a pet project, if you have an initiative or all this, like the first step should really to come and see us to kind of like see where we could go with it, put you in the right context, put you, like we see where we're going in policy committee with the HR consulting firm, where it's like, it's a combination, like the best work happens when we work together. When you hold things within council and then we come here to discuss like, okay, how are we gonna do it? Well, we don't know because we weren't able to put it into practice or even give concrete solutions because this is the first time we're finding out about it. But like, yeah, for this particular project, I'm not sure where it will fit in or what will be done. Like we're working hard to kind of like address the issue of sexual violence, well, whether it be virtual or like on campus right now. But like, yeah, this, I don't know if something at this level of thought in terms of like how the project is structured would be a fit, especially considering it's COVID and people are at home now, so that it can kind of like be something that people work with and like that we work on and try to brush up before we bring back to council. But I guess I would recommend that this like go down to a committee. I'm not sure which committee, if it would be like, yeah, I don't want to suggest any one because it's kind of like this is intersectional of different ones, but I would bring this down to committee, or even something like this, we could create an ad hoc committee right now and like have people who are motivated and who want to kind of like see it and then kind of like step into be like, okay, how do we want to do this? Who's going to chair this? How are we going to potentially achieve whether it's this goal or kind of like supporting in the work to end sexual violence on campus and create a safer space?
Right, thank you. Hirsch, did you want to speak now?
Sure. Thanks. All right. So I'm just going to say I love the initiative, Matthew. However, I would like to call attention to 2 points in Bill 151. I'm going to start with just reading a bit of the explanatory notes in the beginning. The Act further provides that the sexual violence related services available within an educational institution must be grouped together, and that institutions may enter into agreements with other educational institutions and with external resources to offer services. So based on the explanatory note of Bill 151 of the year 2017, this could not be independent from SARC. But that's not entirely the case, as reading part 5 of that bill is it states the educational institution must group all the available sexual violence related services and resources together in a known and readily accessible place, which we are not the educational institution. So whether or not we would fall under that umbrella is a bit ambiguous, but it might, I don't know the actual answer. This is something that the executive would probably have to check in with either Walter or our lawyers. It might be the part about it being separate from SARC might be a violation of Bill 151. Also, I think it might be a good, even if it's not, it might be a better idea to work within SARC for the simple reason that they have full-time staff. And I don't think $5,000 would get us that.
All right, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I don't want to let any motions go that might like violate Quebec law either. So there's always the option to send to committee for further review. I know we've been doing that a lot tonight, so apologies to the committees for your workload, but yeah, it could be a prudent thing to do. James, go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of just want to echo a few statements that people have made already. But main points, like giving additional funding to SARC, I think, would be a much more effective use of resources, especially hearing about, stuff in Bill 151. That might be the best course of action, especially because this, like, just creating this center and an earmark of $5,000, I'm looking at that and I'm like, that is not the budget. Like the budget for that is much higher, and like it would require a lot of additional resources on the CSU's part, especially when it comes to hiring people and all this other stuff. As much as the initiative is a very decent initiative, it's simply not feasible. And to give, for example, extra resources to SARC to maybe like hire an additional counselor, to hire additional resources and give that to SARC, which already has basically the overhead covered for this new center. Like, to do this, it wouldn't just be like, if we want to do this, it wouldn't just be $5,000 out of the CSU budget. We would have to create an entirely new fee levy, like we did with Hojo or the Legal Information Clinic. Like, this isn't a $5,000 project, and like that's just my take. Like, this is not a $5,000 project. This is like a fee level, like a fee levy level project, like a CSU fee levy level project, much to the same effect of a Hojo and the Advocacy Center and all this other stuff. And if we want to help people, and if we want to be in concert with Bill 151, it's much better to just work with SARC to, for example, do stuff like get additional counselors.
Great, thank you. Sarah, go ahead.
All right, so I guess what I would say with this is just like, hang on one second. I guess one of my main concerns with this is, like, having worked on issues with sexual violence, including the university, is just really not a good idea to begin with. And I wish, like, some of us who are working on things pertaining to sexual violence, like myself or Margot, could have been consulted about this to give, like, an opinion, because this is just the university, and especially giving money to SARC, is not going to help. Time and time again, they have not helped students pertaining to sexual violence at all, and have been completely disregarded by the university admin. So just on that level, having to, like, collaborate with them is just a big fat no on that issue. Yeah, like, it would have just also been nice to just know to, like, kind of help and steer the direction into the right way with this. Although I know, like, the intentions are good, it just would have been nice to know so that we could have provided more information on what the proper procedure is to kind of do this, because I would not approve this, to be honest. So yeah, that's what I would just say pertaining to that. And plus, like, yeah, I think maybe in that sense, like, a bit of education on, like, the university level of what's going on and how they actually treat survivors of sexual violence is very important, because, to be quite frank, they don't care at the university. They only care about their reputation, especially pertaining to these situations. So I would really recommend that. And, like, maybe you need to also, in that sense, to educate yourselves on the services that we do provide at the CSU too, like the Legal Information Clinic, so advocacy, and Hojo. Those are, like, different fields, right? So you also have to take that into perspective too. But giving $5,000 to SARC is just no, it's a no-go.
Great, thank you. Just a reminder, you use the third person as well. Thanks. Harrison, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I definitely support the spirit of this motion, and I understand that, all the different concerns and logistics that are being brought up, but I think that the motion kind of allows for that. So maybe if we send it to a committee, I'm not sure what committee is best appropriate to handle this situation, this motion, but I do definitely think that it's important that we that we work on this and that we address this. So, yeah.
Thank you. Eduardo, go ahead.
Yeah. So, like a few people said, I think this is a good motion in the sense of, I think the project's good. I think it's something that we should do. Like they also said, I think it's important to have it student-led as opposed to giving any collaboration with the university just because of the way we get treated. That also being said, I think because we're off basically a year, we're not going to be on council. I think it's going to be really good that we could work on this throughout this year, and not that we're on council, not in person, because there's not going to be a rush for it. So we could really take our time throughout the whole year and build this into a proper thing and collaborate with all the proper groups. That being said, I think there's also a lot more work that has to be done on sexual violence in the CSU. Currently, our policy is we're not allowed using the punishment part of our policy or holding accountability. So something I would like to see in the meantime while we're working on this is to actually update our policy so we are able to keep people accountable, because currently that's not in effect. But yes, thank you, Matthew, for thinking of this project. And I think from here on, we're going to be able to build something really nice out of it.
Thank you. Margot, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to move to postpone this motion until our next regular council meeting,
Okay.
so we can come back to it. And can I talk a little bit about things to, or I guess I'm talking about why that's a good idea. Can I motivate?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll just get a second first. So the motion on the table is to, or the proposed motion is to table this motion until the September regular council meeting. Which, okay, seconded by Jeremiah. I'll just, the date is September 16th for anyone wondering. And Margot, your motivation.
Yeah, I think this is a really great idea, and gonna info dump a little bit about SARC and the sexual violence policy and why we don't already have a peer support network around sexual violence in CSU. The reason we don't is because it was recommended by the Our Turn action plan many years ago. One of the first steps is to create a peer-to-peer sexual violence support like training thing under the student union. But we had the Center for Gender Advocacy, which was actively doing that and providing peer support. However, because their fee levy is uncertain now, and also because of the pandemic, that has really bottomed out and they're not sure of their funding going forward. So they're not able to work at the same capacity. So I think it would be a really great idea to have a peer-to-peer sexual violence support center run by the CSU and protected by the CSU that is separate from SARC. Specifically because although SARC, the people who work there individually can be great and doing good work, it's also run by the administration, and when sexual violence charges are being processed, where the charges are against members of the administration, the university has a vested interest in shutting those down. Just like generally speaking, not that they would, but like they have an interest in that. So don't give your money to the administration to work on sexual violence, because we already give them a lot of money through our tuition. And I would love to see this happen, but let's postpone it so we can all work together on it.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the motion on the table is to table this to September. So there's a few speakers from the previous list. So I'll just go through, and if you want to speak to this, you can, and if not, you can rescind. Diana, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was actually going to propose a motion to make an ad hoc committee about this topic to further talk about this topic, review the motion, kind of do what needs to be done with it because it is so big and important. And then that committee could also decide about like how much they want to work with SARC, what other initiatives they might want to start. And it can kind of like continue from here on today, this topic. So that's what I was going to propose.
Okay, with the motion on the table currently, because I think there's a couple of things that, like Margot had said, that might need to be figured out. You can either motion that after we dispose of this motion, or do it in September, either or. So, yeah, I hope that clarifies. Desiree, go ahead.
Sorry, 2 seconds. Yeah, sorry, I keep having my laptop open at the same time.
Oh, no problem.
I just want clarification. I'm sorry about this, but what is the motion on table? Is it to send it back to the September meeting?
Yeah. So it's just a table it to September.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'll speak in favor of that, especially if Matthew, like, I think we all really appreciate the sentiment, but if you could, well, I mean, if the councillor could flesh out a bit more the proposal to have it presented to council, that'd be very much appreciated. Thanks.
Sure. Jeremiah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. A question. When I'm looking at this motion, I just want to clarify that the SARC is more run by the administration / run by the staff, and the motion that Matthew's trying to present is more of a club done by the students that like handles it themselves, sort of. Is that, just to clarify, is that what this is?
Matthew, did you want to clarify?
Yeah, so it's similar to what you said. So it'd basically be a like student-run like center that would tackle the issues hands-on, as opposed to like using like a middle organization or an intermediary to kind of get the goals done. And we're just trying to remove the reliance on the administration, which I think is the issue here, and kind of take on the responsibility as students, because the students are the ones that want to get the change done.
Yeah, I can see where that is coming from. I understand what you're talking about, because at Vanier, we had a student-run first aid team, and I was part of that, so I understand.
All right, thank you. Okay, so if there's no further discussion, we'll move to a vote. So the motion on the table is to table this to September meeting, which will be September 16th. So is there any opposition to tabling this? Okay, so if not, that carries unanimously. Diana, did you want to propose your motion now?
No, actually, I think it's better to give it some time, and then I think I'll come back to that.
Sure, great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so if there's nothing further on point 8, we can move to point 9, economic model. And Matthew, you had said you wanted to rescind this?
Yeah, just for the sake of the climate in the room, I'll get rid of it.
Okay, perfect. So the motion is rescinded, and we can move to 10, which is freedom of speech. And Matthew, this one is yours.
Perfect. So whereas the Concordia Student Union's bylaws and standing regulations adhere to the laws outlined in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, whereas everyone has the following fundamental freedoms: freedom of conscience and religion, freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression, including freedom of the press and other media of communication, freedom of peaceful assembly, and freedom of association. Whereas the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 19.3, allows for the restriction of free speech when it violates respecting of the rights or reputations of others. Be it resolved that the CSU accepts all forms of freedom of expression. This is an amended part that I'm including, as per Section 2B of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, on campus as it relates to Canadian political affiliations. Be it further resolved that the CSU denounce any student actions that prohibit students from expressing themselves politically in a Canadian political aspect if they directly violate one's respecting of rights or reputations of others. Be it further resolved that the CSU acknowledge that freedom of speech is not absolute if hate speech can be proven present, if a reasonable, aware of context and circumstances would view the expression as likely to expose a person or persons to detestation and vilification on the basis of prohibited grounds of discrimination. Be it further resolved that the CSU adopt this motion in the spirit of protecting the aforementioned charters for all of its members in order to avoid any potential legal repercussions. Be it further resolved that the budgetary impact of this motion is nil. Now I'm just going to copy and paste the amended version here so you can all read it. Oh, it's too long. Okay, so I'm going to.
Yeah, I'll just get a second first. Do we have a second for the motion?
I'll do second.
Seconded by Jeremiah. And your motivation, Matthew?
Yeah, so really quickly, I think it's no surprise to everyone that, you know, I was the former president of Conservative Concordia, and I do have conservative political opinions, and I've been attacked on that personally without having saying anything that, you know, attacks someone personally. I have been very respectful in my discourse with others regarding my opinions, and I've still felt that because of my political affiliations that I am less of a person. I know that this sentiment is shared among a lot of other conservatives on this campus, and they feel almost threatened to speak their mind when it comes to Canadian political opinions. Now, of course, when I'm consulting with other people, they had let me know that regarding certain aspects of free speech, that hate speech can be proven. And I do think that that's very important to mention, that free speech is not absolute, and just because you have political opinions doesn't give you the right to say anything you want. But I do think if one has the ability to communicate themselves respectfully and intelligently regarding certain political topics and can engage properly in debate, I don't think that they should ever be attacked on their ideas. And so that's the spirit of the motion for how I am bringing it forward.
All right, thank you. Amma, go ahead.
Yes, I just have a question, two questions for my colleague regarding the motion. On the first, be it resolved, what does, okay, I'm just gonna read it again. Be it resolved that the CSU accepts all forms of freedom of speech as per section 2B of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms on campus as it relates to Canadian political affiliation. What does as it relates to Canadian political affiliations mean?
So
As
like,
a first question.
Yeah. So basically, the 2B is just outlining the actual definition of what freedom of expression is understood as under the law in Canada. And as it relates to Canadian political affiliations, there's a number of Canadian political affiliations. I mean, you've got Conservatives, Liberals, NDPs, Greens, Bloc Québécois, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just talking strictly based on a federal or even provincial view, that as long as your party is established, regardless what it may be, that just because you may be affiliated to that party, you should not be attacked on your character, as long as your opinions are not considered hate speech under the law.
I agree, nobody should be attacked on their character. Also, last question, what does, is this going to go on in referendum, or is it just going to be a statement like Black Ribbon Day?
I don't think it has to be a position. I think this is just something that needs to be mentioned in a time of division in society. I think that a lot of people sometimes get carried away in the political arguments, and honestly, I think it's great when people are passionate about their political ideas, but I do think it's also important to always be respectful of people's different political opinions. And I think that that is the main idea behind this, is just to make sure that as long as your ideas aren't considered hateful, that you should at least have a voice somewhere to voice it, even in the public. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel, go ahead.
So, in the charter, the first section, it's the reasonable limits clause. So in that, free speech does have its limits of hate against groups like this, like political affiliations, race, religion, and the list goes on. So I just want to know, what would this motion really do, tangibly, for CSU, if it's already in our charter?
Yeah, so yeah, I of course, I mean, under our charter, that this is already done. I think the idea is that as someone who's acted as a president of a political club that has received a lot of negativity over the years, I can say that people aren't really respecting the charter in those ways. And I've been called a lot of things that I don't really want to mention on this recording. I mean, I've even been called an anti-Semite, which is interesting. So, I just want to make sure that this is just reinforcing to the student body that we accept Canadian political affiliations, and that no one associated to these Canadian political affiliations should feel or should receive these reactions or verbal assaults or whatever it may be. I agree that there may not be any physical impact from this statement if the CSU were to make it, but I do think that it would be reinforcing for a lot of these people that feel threatened to speak up if their speech is really considered free speech.
Okay, thank you. Zachary, go ahead.
Yeah, so I agree with the spirit of this this motion. I just I have a few questions and concerns, mostly about the first, be it further resolved. How would can you speak more towards how this would affect other students' legitimate right to protest other students if they disagree with a point?
Oh, by all means, I'm someone who loves to debate Canadian federal politics. I love to sit and debate policies and whatnot. The difference is it's when, someone hears that I'm part of conservative Concordia and then proceeds to point a finger at me and call me an anti-Semite. It's that type of discourse that I'm trying to limit on campus through an official statement where our union support general free speech when it comes to us being associated to any political party, as long as the actual words that are coming out of someone's mouth isn't necessarily considered hate speech onto any particular marginalized groups or to any groups that may feel affected negatively. So I guess what I'm just trying to say is students would have a right to say, like, I don't like this political party. It's just to prevent and to reinforce what the charters already say and to make sure students really understand that, because I don't think certain people do, and it would just be good to reinforce that across the board.
Okay, thank you. Was that all, Zach?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. James, go ahead.
Yeah, so like the spirit of the motion is actually quite good. I would suggest, oh, I already started speaking, so I can't motion, that we can actually construct a decent policy around this. So for example, especially like the last part, like it's, I mean, I don't know if it's so much of a problem now, but like I know a lot of, like in the past, there was issues with, for example, kind of very legitimate political events, and then them trying to get, people trying to attack the event, or like, stuff like the heckler's veto and all this other stuff, especially in regards to like just, rank order, your average political expression that, your political parties in Canada have. So this good motion, I think, that we support, just people talking it out instead of throwing fists at each other.
All right, thank you. Harrison, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I just want to speak in favor of this motion. I mean, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I was also the leader of a political club on campus, and coming from that kind of perspective and standpoint, I think that being able to debate freely and to discuss issues that we may disagree on, but have respect for free speech, and being able to express ourselves, that's something that we have to acknowledge and accept as a university, while also denouncing hate speech, because there definitely is a fine line between the two, which is also included in this motion, and I just think it's a great motion. So thank you.
Sure. Desiree, go ahead.
Thanks. I'd like to ask first, Matthew, would you consider this to be like an official, if this was to pass, would it be like an official positions from the CSU, like an official position?
Yeah, I was asked a lot, like if I wanted this to be an official position. I actually didn't, just because it's already like we had said, it's already in our charters. It should be known as like general, like Canadian citizens or people that are just coming here and understand our general laws and our charter. But I just do think it should serve as a reinforcement to people that in a very divisive political climate, that it is okay to debate ideas, but it's not okay to attack the person. But I mean, then again, if they're actually saying things that are proven to be hateful under the law, which we've seen in different court cases, then by all means go for that person if they're truly a hateful person. But if they're really just trying to debate policy and bring forward things from a Canadian political party standpoint, I don't think their character should ever be attacked. And it just serves as a reinforcement to the student body.
Okay. Because yeah, I mean, if it was a position, as you already did for another motion that was brought on the table, and this had to go to referendum, I think inherently most people are for freedom of speech. I just want to point out how, with often when people speak of freedom of speech, it's often from a point of view where they were allowed to say specific things in the past, and now that people whose voices weren't heard before are actually speaking out when people say things that they don't feel comfortable with, now there's an attack on free speech. So I want that context to be still mentioned in the conversation. That's not necessarily where you're coming from, but that's often when people, voice how freedom of speech is being taken away from most people, they speak from a place where they used to be able to say a whole bunch of very problematic stuff, and now they can't anymore, so they can't. So that context is important. If it's a position, I think it'd be good to send it to referendum. Other than that, if you're already just reinforcing something that already exists in the CSU, that's good. Yeah, I guess maybe open up to the council to see if we should send this to referendum, just so that we have the same procedure for any type of motion that's brought forward, because this is pretty much uncontroversial, other than the context that could be attached to it. But if another controversial motion was to be brought forward, I don't want this to be used as the one that makes us bypass the referendum thing that was already very controversial to begin with.
Thank you. Isaiah, go ahead.
So yeah, I just want to kind of like echo what Desiree said in the sense of like the careful divide of free speech, because I'm like, I understand the intentions is to kind of protect your political affiliations, and like no one deserves to get denounced for their beliefs on how they believe that their society that they live in or the government, the rule should operate. But it just becomes kind of like this slippery slope in terms of like what people, like as it's already written in the charter, the CSU reminding people, it's kind of like how we try to urge and remind people to kind of like that Black Lives Matter. And like we're advocating and we're still advocating, but people, like, I'm not sure what your resolution for this is coming like after that statement. I'd much rather it, if it goes to referendum, as I said before with the previous stuff, to kind of just echo that the CSU is a political diverse place where people shouldn't be discriminated based off their like, these would be two separates, like the racism one and the political affiliation one. And that way we can then build up on policies as the motion and test to kind of like any student found discriminating based off this, that would be more appropriate than us going to vote it here now, which, because again, it's like we're the CSU, and the way that our colleagues who made the referendum for democratize the positions book is anytime that the CSU denounces something, anytime that it has to fall within our positions and our beliefs or in our operational capacity, like our campaign type of thing. Or there's always certain situations like, again, and my thoughts and prayers to those in Lebanon from the explosion or whatnot. There's cases like this where we need to send our support, or we need to go and support people through troubled times. But stuff like this, we should just pull the students in terms of referendum and ask them, be like, even if, I guess, if it's obvious that it's in the charter, let it be known that the Concordia Student Union and its students believe this. And then from there, we make proper policies that are representative of what our students want.
All right, thank you. Hadassah from the Concordian, go ahead.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. So I just have a question about this motion. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay. It would be that one of the intentions is to not allow hate speech, but sometimes, especially as a journalist, that's very kind of, there's a thin line. We know that the People's Party had various connections to hate groups and right-wing groups, and whenever they were called out on that, it was seen as an attack on their free speech per se, or the immigration policies that they put forward was seen as an attack on free speech. So I just wanted to know, how would the motion address these specific issues that, when you're calling someone out, what would you back when the person pulled the card?
Matthew, do you want to respond?
Yeah, for sure. So first, I just want to paste the part that wasn't pasted before from the amended version of the motion. So it's just like defining what hate speech is considered as under the context of the law. Just this would be included in the amended motion. It was too long to paste into the Zoom chat. But to address some of the concerns that have happened with the PPC in the past, I have full confidence in like the legal process. If anyone truly feels that the PPC, and I do myself have serious issues with the rhetoric that has come from some of the candidates in the PPC, as well as from the leader itself. I do believe that if things were said that were considered hate speech, that the people that want to bring this forward in terms of a legal battle will do so, and will do so successfully. So I do think that while it is fair to say that the PPC has kind of gone around this free speech bubble per se, it won't be long, because they've already encountered issues issues with candidates with the rhetoric, and it's reflected in their fundraising. It's reflected in their popularity, and I think that the candidates that have already been called out for saying things along the hate speech lines will continue to be called out successfully. But it's just for the people that do have relatively respectful rhetoric in other parties, that they be judged for what they say.
Thank you. Nicole, go ahead.
Yeah, so again, coming at this from a campaigns perspective, where I often organize and participate in events of a political nature at the CSU, and also in other contexts outside of the CSU. So yeah, the free speech thing, I definitely support free speech. Just throwing that out there, I definitely support free speech. I definitely think it's a more complex issue than it's often made out to be. I do agree that, in my own experience, I've often seen situations where, I guess I'm sorry, it's a bit late and I'm tired, so I'm not expressing myself very well, but I guess I'm just concerned about how this would play out tangibly, I guess, as Daniel said earlier, just because there are a lot of situations where free speech is kind of used to say that people can't protest against a certain group. If a certain group is let's say the PPC, if the PPC is having an event and people show up to protest, it's often stated that they're attacking the free speech of that group, whereas doesn't the group protesting also have free speech to disagree with what they're saying? It's kind of I find that sometimes in a concrete, while I completely agree with the motion itself, I agree with the idea, it's just that in practice, it's often free speech is often a bit selective. So I won't say much more about that, because I feel that Desiree and Isaiah have already expressed basically what I wanted to say. The other point I wanted to make is that I have some concerns about some of the language used in this motion, just especially in terms of the Canadian political affiliations. And the only reason I say that is because once again, I am in an organizing context. I encounter a lot of people, including Concordia students, who for various reasons do not feel that their political ideas are represented by the Canadian system. So for example, a lot of Indigenous students don't feel represented by the Canadian system. A lot of students who are, I guess, left of center is one way to put it, don't really feel represented by Canadian political affiliations. So in that optic, I kind of just feel by having this motion relate to Canadian political affiliations specifically, I don't really know how to reword it, but I just feel that that would exclude some of the CSU's membership from this motion that's about freedom of speech. Whereas, even if they don't feel necessarily represented by the Canadian system, they should still have basic freedom of speech. You know what I mean?
Right, thank you. So we're at our 20 minutes right about now. Is everyone okay with finishing the speakers list? We have 4 speakers. All good? Okay. Lauren, go ahead.
So I would just like to know, with this motion, Matthew, what exactly, like, what type of action do you want council to take with this motion? Like, I'm in full support of its intention and everything, but what exactly are you asking the CSU and council to do? Like, what type of action do you want to come out of this motion?
In the basic way of how I see this planning out is this passes and the CSU just lists the main political parties and then just maybe highlight a couple other ideas or like Nicole had mentioned with students maybe not being represented through the mainstream parties, maybe mention that those ideas regardless like of the main parties or some other fringe parties that may be out there that do not fall into the hate speech category. I think that just list all those things and just be like, no matter where you lie, like just know that, the CSU does promote the free speech for all these people in these parties, as long and like, very, very boldly, they're not considered hate speech with the definition under the law. So it's just like that simple reinforcement. And just to address one other concern, which is the framing of, typically some people, they say, oh, like I'm a protectioner of free speech because they're trying to like mask hate speech with, that very gray zone, very dangerous area. That's why I included the definition of hate speech, because I want it to be very like right or wrong. I don't want this to be like, just some mischievous little motion that could kind of be weaseled away around. I just want it to be very clear that as long as you're respecting the law and it's considered free speech, no matter where you lie on the political spectrum, there's a place for you and a voice for you.
So do you want this to be posted on our social media? Do you want this to be posted on our website? And if so, then this needs to be deferred to comms, or like it needs to be sent to the designated outlet for this message to get out. Like, where do you want this posted? Because then we need to motion for this to go there.
I guess the traditional ways that the CSU communicates to its students. So
can we have an executive speak on this, please?
There's a couple. Oh no, wait. There's none in the speakers list right now. I mean, I guess if anyone wants to, they can put themselves on the speakers list, but I'm not going to force anyone to talk on it. Is that it, Lauren?
Well, I just want council to decide an action with this motion, because there's no action described in the motion of what Matthew wants us to do with this. So can we please like make a motion to send it somewhere or have it posted somewhere, or task the executive or comms committee or department to deal with this motion, because we can't approve it without any action.
Thank you. Matthew, you're next on the speakers list.
So can I just make a suggestion then to amend the motion that be it further resolved that that the comms department be in charge of phrasing and communicating this motion to the student body?
Okay. Do we have a second for that?
I'll second it.
Okay, seconded by Matthew. Did you want to motivate, Matthew?
I think the comms department is the most effective department to communicate various aspects to students.
Great, thank you. Is there any opposition to adding this amendment to the motion? Okay, so it can be considered friendly, and I'll go on with the speakers list. Desiree, go ahead.
Hi. Sorry.
Okay.
Essentially, after hearing out everyone speak, I'd like to have a motion to send this to referendum.
Like, do you mean like a position? Because there's no wording in the way that a position would be worded.
Yeah, it's true. It's just because although this is essentially although there's a lot of political context behind it, the words are apolitical, and I don't want to start having council vote on positions. Yeah.
I mean, it could be sent to a committee to be reworked, or it can be tabled or anything like that if that's your intention.
Yeah. Was I the last one on the speaker list?
No, there's Margot, Amma, and then Isaiah.
Okay, I'll let the other people talk, and then if you could come back to me, please.
Sure. Margot, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'd like to move to table this until next meeting.
Okay, do we have a second to table this to September?
I'll second.
Second, I think that was Amma. Margot, just to clarify, did you mean next meeting, like an SCM, or like the regular council in September?
Next regular council.
Okay, perfect. Just clarifying. Do you want to motivate?
Yeah, I'm just really not able to focus here, and I'm feeling the energy like seriously dip, and I think this is an important conversation to have. And we seem to be going in circles, so I think we should come back to it with fresh eyes.
All right. Okay, so there's a couple people left on the speakers list. I'll just go through. Isaiah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, no, because I had said it before. I was leaning in the side of more Desiree, but like Margot's suggestion works where it will give us time to, I know you're planning on resigning soon, Matthew, but we would like your input, or maybe like, I really think it's more appropriate if this goes to a referendum, just framed properly so that we can make sure that, and kind of like there was a position on free speech that will probably be coming back to referendum anywho. So if we can kind of like intertwine the two and like put it to referendum to include a section on political beliefs so that people who are trying to just get their political views across in a respectful manner aren't demonized and attacked for no good reason type of thing. So that, but like with the motion to table, we can work on that in the coming weeks.
Thank you. And Amma, go ahead.
Yes, I would just like to encourage my colleague to explore this for a referendum position, and maybe even code of conduct amendments or policies, because I think it could be a good idea, especially if it's more specific regarding people that have, political affiliations and whatnot. I think that could be a plus for what we have right now. So I would highly encourage you to explore this for a referendum for sure.
Great, thank you. Okay, so with that, the speakers list is exhausted, so we can move to a vote. So first of all, is there any opposition to tabling this to September regular meeting?
Me.
Okay, so in that case, I will do the roll call vote. So if you're voting yes, it means you want to table it to September. If you're voting no, it means you do not. And if you are abstaining, then you are abstaining. Diana, how do you vote?
I'll vote yes.
Thank you. Yes. Harrison?
Abstain.
Abstain. Danielle? Not here, I don't think. Matthew K?
I abstain.
Abstain. Chelsea?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Yes. Howard, go ahead.
I vote yes.
Yes. Jeremiah? Jeremiah? Not here. Lauren?
Yes.
Yes. Zach?
Yes.
Yes. Aryeh?
No.
No. Sarah?
Yes.
Yes. Margot?
Yes.
Yes. Shivani?
Yes.
Yes. Amma?
Yes.
Yes. Marlena?
Yes.
Yes. Chris K? It's not here. Chris D?
Come back to me after.
Okay. Matthew B?
Abstain.
Abstain. Sean?
Yes.
Yes. Paige?
Yes.
Yes. Anais?
Yes.
Yes. James?
Hold on a sec. Sorry, what are we voting on?
We're voting on whether to table this to the next meeting.
Oh, vote yes.
Okay, yes. James, how do you vote?
Abstain.
Jane? Desiree?
Yes.
Yes. Hirsch?
No.
No. And Chris D?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So the tally is 16 yes, 2 no, and 4 abstain. So this will come back in September. Is there anything else to discuss on this topic? Okay. So if not, we can move to, oh, I accidentally put announcements on the agenda. Usually there aren't any for SCMs, but we'll just go with it. Does anyone have any announcements?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's it called? Please, if you haven't already, because we saw, for example, that Victoria had created a document that's in Teams. And so get access to your counselor emails, play around with the software. If you have any problems, contact the CSU IT and like not the university IT so that you get the support, or reach out to executives and we can guide you through the process.
All right, thank you. Hirsch, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to, well, I guess the announcements mostly for the chairs of the various committees is for appointments, we're probably going to be calling an SDM to ratify those minutes because they have to get done sooner rather than later. So if there's anything else that needs to be ratified, might as well do it in the same SDM.
Awesome. Coordination is good. Thanks, Hirsch. Shivani, go ahead.
I'm not sure if this is the place in announcements, but just like some parting end of summer going into fall words, if that's allowed.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll try to keep this short. My brain is fried, so I do apologize. The folks I wanted to address this to aren't here in this meeting, so I'm not really sure what happened, but that absence is disappointing in and of itself. But I'll just say for the record, I think certain instances in this meeting highlighted a disconnect this council has between what we can achieve with respect to representing students and what we end up discussing. Council is not a place for intellectual stimuli or debate when there is an actual duty and potential to take solid, actionable efforts to improve student life. We're here to advocate for students, but time and time again, there's always someone who will choose to favor proper procedure when there's a capacity to address hurt caused by internal strife and then improve the union from there. There's also, you know, always an effort to arbitrarily curate the CSU to one person's individual personal fancy with no real impact beyond that. All that is to say, I just kind of ask that as we proceed into fall, that we understand that as representatives, we're dealing with a lot of complexity that not one of us can hope to deal with alone, and that we're capable of much more than what we have done throughout the summer. So teamwork and all that jazz. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Daniel, go ahead.
I just wanted to take the moment to thank all of you for attending the trainings that I have been harassing all of you about. We're finally done besides Caitlin's Robert's Rules ones. For the sexual violence training that you attended, I will be sending you a form to fill out. Basically, since you attended the DOS one, you don't have to do the online training anymore. So when I send you the online form, you just put in your name and your info, and then you're going to be taken off the list of the administration's to-do list, I guess. And like Hirsch said, I plan on asking Isaiah to call a special council meeting for next Wednesday to approve the appointments. So I guess if there are things that you want to get done again for more motions, like maybe try to get them ready for that too. So yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, and just to qualify that, I'm gonna put a poll or when to meet or whatever for the Robert's Rules trainings. Super informal, not, what's the word, like not obligatory. Highly encourage new and former counselors, executives to come to it. It's not that long. I'll try to make it interesting. That's all my pitch for it. James, go ahead.
Yeah, so everybody hear me?
Yep.
Great. So if anybody is interested, you know, announcements. Summer's coming. Oh, sorry, summer's over almost. I can barely believe it, but we're going back to school. And if anybody wants to do a little, you know, outdoorsy type activity, I'm gonna chill for my own people a bit. We're having you know, a back to school skeet event. So if you have ever, you know, wondered what that's like, just go on the CUSA Facebook page. There's a link to buy tickets. They're about $65, I think. And it includes an instructor and like a round of skeet and a round of trap. And it's like a nice time for people to kind of gather back together. I think there's like 9 places for the morning. So that's how many people we can take, and there's going to be transportation, everything. So if anybody wants to try that out, you know, this is like an Olympic sport. So, and it's very accessible, and the people there are amazing and helpful. And we've only had good reviews from the Valleyfield Club. So there we go.
All right, thank you. Matthew K, go ahead.
Just two last little things. First of all, thank you for everyone who came to this meeting. I know I called it alongside two other counselors. I'm not guilty of being a monster person, but I'm really happy that everyone came. And secondly, it's been a pleasure serving with all of you. If this is my last meeting, I've learned a lot from you, and I'm going to take the lessons learned and move forward with them with an open conscience, and always just try to take my experiences and bring them forward. So thank you, and take care, everybody, and have a good rest of your summer before the classes start again.
All right, thank you. And Margot, go ahead.
Thank you. Also, I move to adjourn.
Sure. Yeah, there's no one on the speakers list. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Isaiah. And meeting adjourned, folks. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you all.
Good, everyone.
Caitlin,
Bye.
Bye.
Caitlin and the execs,
Take
you
care.
guys just want to hang around after you stop the recording?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. Thanks for that.